Chapter 320. Yanemo was the girl with the highest status in the class. Not only was her family rich and powerful, but she was also very generous. As long as you didn't get in her way, you would be happy for a few months if she gave you a little. For example, this butterfly love flower cosmetics cost 100 gold coins per box. Commoners couldn't afford it at all, but Yanemo often gave it away. What about Yanemo's family business? They found the successor of the butterfly love flower, so it's not strange that they can do this business. Ajur leaned closer and sniffed. It was quite fragrant, but a little pungent. He didn't like it very much. Yanemo's family's surname is Gaotun. I've seen it in a book. 100 years ago, the owner of the butterfly love flower was the Gaotun family. The Gaotun family has always had a single descendant. 100 years ago, there was a tragedy that shocked the entire sea world. The Gaotun family was completely wiped out, and no one survived. Fengwu had read many books, and she happened to see this story in a book called Strange Tales of the Sea. According to the Strange Tales of the Sea, the death of the Gaotun family was very mysterious. No one knew who killed them, and the case was still an unsolved case to this day. In the Book of Maritime Anecdotes, there is a record that might be useful to us. It is written in the book that 100 years ago, the head of the Gordon family spent a huge sum of money to buy a beautiful island for his beloved daughter's birthday as a birthday present. The name of the island was Loose Tail Island, and the daughter of the head of the Gaotun family was called Yanemo Gaotun. There was a lot of information in this, and they were all stunned. Ming Shi and the others immediately understood what Fengwu wanted to say. However, after they understood, their eyes widened, and their eyes were full of disbelief. Yes, no one would be able to remain calm after hearing that they had traveled back in time 100 years ago. Damn it, only a god could do something like traveling back in time. They didn't believe that any human could do such a thing. Was the person who trapped them on the island a god? Of course not. They weren't stupid enough to believe that a god would do such a thing. Furthermore, gods generally wouldn't come to the human world. Ever since the Great War 10,000 years ago, the Three Realms had established the Three Realms Peace Treaty. Since then, no god had set foot in human territory. On the other hand, there were some evil monsters who snuck into the human world to do evil for their own selfish reasons. Many of them were caught by the Star Hall. Is this really 100 years ago? Have we returned to the past? Mo Gui couldn't believe his own words. Impossible, Riot said. Aside from the god of time, who controls time, even a god cannot reverse time. This was too unbelievable. Any rational human being would not believe it. I suspect that we may have entered some kind of illusion. Everything that happened here is what really happened 100 years ago. Ming Shi voiced his guess. Illusion. Mo Gui and Riot were shocked. Why hadn't they thought of that? If it was an illusion, then everything made sense. I knew something was wrong a long time ago. I can't even open the seal. There shouldn't be any power in the world that can restrict the four god seals, but after coming here, my connection to the seal seems to have completely disappeared. Ajur knew something was wrong. The feeling of not being able to use any of his power was terrible. It made him want to scratch the wall. It's the same for me. After coming here, I can't hear the sounds of flowers, trees, or even small animals, Fengwu said weakly. It's the same for me. There's no aura of nature here. Everything here is fake. The sun is fake. The moon is fake. Even the people outside are fake. They must have been created from the memories of the mysterious man. Ming Shi was the prince of the Silvermoon Ancient Kingdom and the future successor of the empire. His strength was unquestionable. In addition, he had a powerful divine bloodline. Logically speaking, even if he couldn't use his strength, the power of his bloodline wouldn't disappear. However, on this island, the power of his bloodline had disappeared. He would be an idiot if he still couldn't find anything. Yes, Ming-Shi had long since discovered that they were in an illusion. It was a world created from someone else's memories. There were very few people in the world who could do something like this. Ming-Shi couldn't guess who this person was or what they wanted to do. It wasn't until Fengwu voiced her guess that Ming-Shi figured it out. Although he still didn't know who this mysterious man was, he could guess what they wanted to do. Holy shit! Where did this mysterious man come from? He's so awesome. He's really good at illusions. Mo Goe had almost knelt down in front of the mysterious man when they were in a powerful illusion. He was already so awesome. Why did he still want to make things difficult for these juniors? If you want to know who he is, why don't you just ask? Please come out. I know you've been watching us all this time. Ming-Shi suddenly smiled faintly and looked around. Hearing Ming-Shi's words, the others couldn't stay calm. What? That mysterious man had been near them all this time. The three boys quickly looked around, but they didn't see anything. Just then, the old and mysterious voice sounded again. You're really smart. It seems that I didn't find the wrong person this time. Who are you? Why are we trapped here? And what's your relationship with the people who died on this island 100 years ago? Or are you one of them? Ming-Shi threw out several questions in a row. The mysterious man's voice came from nowhere. It was as if he was really talking in their ears, making them unable to locate him. What a smart young man. I believe you won't let me down. Go and find out the truth. Only when you find the truth can you leave this place. The voice sounded again. Not we, it's us. Ming-Shi's smile was still as refreshing as a spring breeze. Even though he was in a different body, his stunningly beautiful face could no longer be seen. It was still breathtaking. The mysterious man was stunned. He hadn't expected this young man to think so much. I really didn't misjudge you. Since you've already seen through it, I won't hide it from you. There's something hidden on this island. If you find it, all of us can leave this place. If you can't find it, you'll stay in this illusion forever, never to return to your original world. After saying this, the mysterious man disappeared again without a trace. No matter how Ajur and the others shouted, no one responded. No need to shout. He's gone. Ming-Shi walked to the table and poured himself a glass of water. Chapter 321. With that, the mysterious man disappeared without a trace. No matter how much Ajur and the others shouted, there was no response. No need to shout. He's gone. Ming-Shi walked to the table and poured himself a glass of water. He left just like that. He didn't even make himself clear. Did he want us to find the culprit or that thing he was talking about? Mo Goe grumbled. We have to complete both tasks. If I'm not wrong, those people outside aren't illusions. Only by finding out the truth and finding the thing that's imprisoning everyone can we truly be saved. Ming-Shi raised his glass and took a sip of water. What are you talking about? Didn't you say they were illusions? Why did you change your mind so quickly? Ajur asked in confusion. At this moment, Fengwu spoke up. They aren't illusions. They're spirits. Spirits? No way. Xiao Wu, you're saying that those outside are all spirits. They're the souls of dead people. Fuck. Weren't they all dead people? Did he have to be so unlucky? Thinking about how he'd spent all this time with dead people, Mo Goe felt a little hurt. Xiao Wu, you can tell that they're spirits. Ming-Shi asked in surprise. He hadn't expected Fengwu to be able to tell the true identity of those people outside. Even he had only just discovered it. What he'd said just now was just a test for the mysterious man. He was satisfied with the results and had also obtained some useful information. Fengwu hesitated for a moment before nodding. Yes, she could tell. Although her body wasn't the same as before, Fenwu hadn't taken away all of her abilities. For example, her eyes. Fenwu's eyes could see spirits. Naturally, she knew that those people outside weren't illusions. They weren't ordinary spirits. They were powerful wraiths. Their resentment was deep and heavy. Fenwu didn't know why she could see these things even though she was clearly Gen now. The only explanation was that she hadn't possessed someone else's body. Instead, she had directly become Gen. That was why her eyes could still see things that others couldn't. She could also sense the life force that others couldn't. The flowers and trees outside were all fake, so she couldn't hear their voices. However, the spirits were all real. That was why she could tell that they were different. So you've already discovered the true identity of those guys outside? Ajur said in surprise. Fenwu shook her head. No, I didn't, Fenwu said seriously, looking at Ajur. Ajur's eyes widened in surprise. Aren't you able to see through their true identities as spirits? What he meant was that if he could see through them, why didn't he notice it? Even Mo Gue and Riot were surprised. They hadn't expected Fenwu to say such a thing. I didn't feel any resentment or evil aura from them. They didn't seem like spirits at all. I only confirmed it today, Fenwu blinked and said innocently. Acting cute was shameful. Everyone felt helpless. Fenwu girl hadn't lied. Just as she had said, those people really didn't seem like spirits. Their bodies were very solid and didn't have the illusory feeling of spirits. Although Fenwu's eyes had already seen that there might be something wrong with them, she hadn't said anything because she wasn't sure. It wasn't until today, when she discussed it with Ming Shi and the others, and the reappearance of that mysterious person that Fenwu had confirmed her guess. I have one more thing to say, Fenwu said. We are the same as them. The same? What does that mean? What do you mean we are the same as them? Ming Shi and the others were puzzled. They didn't understand what Fenwu girl was talking about. Fenwu bit her lip and said, we are also spirits. Fenwu's words were undoubtedly as powerful as a bullet. What did she mean by they were also spirits? Shouldn't they have been pulled into this world as a wisp of consciousness? That's impossible. How can we be spirit bodies? We should only be consciousness bodies. Everyone on the continent knew that there were two ways to enter an illusion. One was to enter physically, and the other was to enter spiritually. Physically entering physically was easy to understand. Physically entering physically was to personally enter the illusion with one's physical body. Spiritually entering was to let a wisp of one's consciousness enter the illusion. Entering an illusion with a physical body could result in death, but entering with one's consciousness was relatively safer. Entering with one's consciousness was like splitting off a wisp of consciousness from the original spiritual consciousness. The strength of this wisp of consciousness depended on how much you split off. Your spirit could be attached to this wisp of consciousness to train in the illusion. If you encounter danger, the wisp of consciousness would be eliminated. It wouldn't be a big problem. At most, your spirit would be damaged, but you wouldn't be fatally injured. For safety reasons, everyone would first use a wisp of consciousness to explore the illusion. After confirming that there was no danger, they would then let their physical body enter. Everyone cherished their lives. Of course, not all illusions were dangerous. Most of the illusions had relatively low lethality. Illusions were originally meant to trap, not kill. Unless someone specifically created an illusionary killing array, then it would be a different story. Because there were only two ways to enter an illusion, Ming Shi and the others naturally thought that they were just a wisp of consciousness. The reason why they didn't think that they were physically present was because one or two of them had very special bodies. They had powerful bloodline power and God-given power. If they were physically present, it would be beneficial for them. They were already worried when they guessed that their spirit would enter the illusion. They all thought that their entire consciousness would enter. Unless one was an idiot, no one would take the initiative to enter an illusion with their entire consciousness. After all, once one's consciousness was completely destroyed, the body that survived would be nothing more than a walking corpse. Without any self-awareness, it was no different from being dead. It was already bad enough that their entire consciousness was forced to enter the illusion. However, Fengwu told them that there was no worst, only worse. It turned out that they weren't even spiritual consciousnesses, but spiritual bodies. Were they all dead? Was that why their souls left their bodies? Thinking of this, everyone's expression turned ugly. No way, they shouldn't be dead, right? Mo Gue frantically typed in his mind. When their souls entered the illusion, they suddenly felt that they were awesome. No one had ever done this before. If their souls entered the illusion, then they wouldn't even have a chance to reincarnate. If only their consciousness entered the illusion, then it would be fine. Even if their consciousness was eliminated, as long as their soul was still there, they could reincarnate. If even their soul was gone, then what was the point? They didn't even need to reincarnate. If they didn't have a soul, how could they reincarnate? Thinking of how serious the destruction of their souls was, everyone felt a pang of sadness. Chapter 322. If it was only the consciousness that entered the body, it would be fine. Even if the consciousness was destroyed, as long as the soul was still there, the soul could be reincarnated. But if the soul was gone, then what was the use of reincarnation? If you don't even have a soul, then what's the point of reincarnating? Thinking of the severity of the soul being destroyed, everyone felt a pang of sadness in their balls. That is to say, as long as we die, we will disappear from the world forever. This was really a pain in the ass. Even Ming Shi, who had always been calm, took a deep breath. If the consciousness was destroyed, with the means of the Silvermoon Ancient Kingdom, there were many ways to recondense the consciousness. But what about the soul? Even the Silvermoon Ancient Kingdom, one of the 4 great empires, could not recondense the soul. Even a real god could not resurrect a soul that had disappeared, let alone an ordinary human in the human world. While Fengwu and the others were discussing the problem of the soul, in another room, 7 people were gathered together. These 7 people were none other than Diliana, Boss Hart, and the others. Hart was lucky and had been living well all this time. The 2 captains of the Expeditionary Mercenary Corps were also alive and well, and the guard named Ali was also alive. Diliana, on the other hand, had only been able to contact Mia so far. The other 2 guards were most likely dead. The 2 of them had not been able to find them. In addition to the 6 of them, there was also one of the 5 people who had never interacted with Hart and the others. This person was an old magician whose strength had reached the level of a magister. It could be said that he was a real expert. If not for his magic being sealed, this old magician would not have joined forces with a group of juniors. Miss Diliana, I wonder if you have found anything. Hart was now a young gardener who was responsible for trimming the flowers and plants. Not really. Diliana smiled bitterly. The 7 of them had gradually gathered together. All of them were trying to find the murderer, but the murderer was too hidden and they had all lost their abilities. So for so long, they had not found any useful clues. Diliana had now become a beautiful schoolgirl who loved to flatter Yanemo. Over the past few days, in order to play this role well, Diliana felt that her moral integrity had been broken. It seems like we have to find Miss Fengwu and the others as soon as possible. The more people there are, the easier it is. Perhaps they have already found some useful clues. Ali said. The remaining people all agreed with this idea. There were only 7 of them, and the others were either dead or had not been found. Right now, it was obvious that the 7 of them could not find anything useful. Since that was the case, they could only look for the others to see if they could find any useful clues. Miss, what if Miss Fengwu and the others have already been killed? Mia asked without much hope. The others also sighed. Too many people had died recently, and no one knew if there were any of their own people among the dead. Try your best. I hope Fengwu is fine. Diliana's eyes darkened. She didn't want anything to happen to Fengwu. I think that while looking for Miss Fengwu and the others, we should continue to investigate this murderer. Expedition Mercenary Group's deputy leader, Megan, said. That's right. A person must have a motive to kill. I don't believe that the murderer would kill for no reason. I'm afraid we have to look for a reason from Yanemo or her family, the old magus said. That was right. The most important thing for a person to kill was a motive. A person who could kill so many people must have a motive. Whether it was a crime of passion or revenge, whether it was a single person or an accomplice, all these had to be investigated. Ming Shi and the others finished their meeting at the same time. Ming Shi and the others' results were similar to Diliana's. Starting from the motive, they had to find out the murderer's motive. There were many motives for murder. Some people killed for love, some killed for a few words, some killed for revenge, and some killed for interest. The first three were not afraid, as long as there were traces, they could always find it. The last one was afraid of, as the killer was purely for interest. That would be bad. After Fengwu and the others finished their discussion, they decided to find out if Yanemo's family had any enemies. If you wanted to know how rich and powerful Yanemo's family was, there were many people who could talk to you. But when it came to enemies, ordinary students couldn't know. Asking Yanemo directly wasn't a good idea. They had to find a way to make Yanemo tell them. At night, the survivors had already lined up in order to take turns patrolling and keeping watch. Even the girls had to participate in the night watch. Tonight, it was Fengwu's group and another group's turn to patrol. Yanemo's house was too big. After so many people died, the house suddenly became empty. The two teachers asked the owner of the house, Yanemo, for permission to let everyone live on the first floor. The rooms upstairs were already empty. Even the servants moved to the first floor. At this time, it was dangerous to be scattered. Because the living area had been reduced, the patrol area had also been reduced. Many places in the house had been locked up by the housekeeper in order to prevent the murderer from sneaking in. There were two groups of 5 people. One was responsible for patrolling inside, and the other was responsible for patrolling outside. Mo Gue was also among the patrolling people. He used some tricks and was successfully assigned to the same group as Fengwu. In addition to Fengwu and Anai, there were 2 other students, a boy and a girl, in the group. Patrolling at night was very boring. It was also very scary. They were afraid that the murderer would come out and kill again. While patrolling at night, they couldn't help but chat a little. The boy in the same group as Fengwu was very talkative. With him around, they weren't so bored and scared. Do you think that the murderer is really among us? A girl in the same group as Fengwu, named Kashali, asked nervously. It shouldn't be. We are all classmates. If someone really wanted to kill us, why wait until now? Anai whispered. That person didn't have the chance. Think about it, if we didn't come across this island, and if he didn't use some method to make us lose the ability to fight, he wouldn't dare to kill us. Anyway, I don't believe it. As the only boy in the group, Chamai was very active. That's true, but who on earth wants to kill us? It's really hard to believe that there might be a murderer among our classmates. We've been together for more than a year. Although there are occasional quarrels, it's still more than a year of interaction. How can they kill us just like that? Anai thought of her dead classmates. Not long ago, they were sitting on the boat and playing together. She didn't expect that not long after, they would be separated by life and death. Her heart was heavy and depressed. Chapter 323. Anai thought of her dead classmates. Not long ago, they were still playing together on the boat. She didn't expect that they would be separated by life and death so soon. Her heart was heavy and depressed. Do you think that the person who wants to kill us could be Yanemo's family's enemy? Mo Gui's current identity was a little boy who didn't have much of a presence in the class. He was not tall, had an ordinary appearance, and was not very strong. In the class, his strength was below average. Chamai was stunned. To be honest, this thought had appeared in most people's minds, but they were now standing in Yanemo's territory, so no one dared to say it out loud. Chamai looked at Mo Gui in surprise. He didn't think that this timid and useless Puli, who usually didn't show his strength, would dare to say such a thing. Kashali didn't think so much. She only thought that the murderer killed for the sake of killing. She had never associated all this with Yanemo's family. After hearing this, she was stunned for a moment and immediately asked a lot of questions. Puli, why would you say that? Did you find something? Kashali looked around to make sure that there were no Yanemo's servants nearby. Then she asked in a low voice. Mo Gui shook his head and said, I didn't find anything. This is just my guess. Think about it. We were all fine before we came to this island, but after we came here, there were suddenly murders one after another. Matsuo Island is Yanemo's property. No matter how you think about it, it can't be unrelated to Yanemo's family. No, this possibility is not big. Think about it. If this person was really after Yanemo's family, why didn't he directly kill Yanemo, but chose to kill people who had nothing to do with her? Anai couldn't help but ask in a low voice. Feng Wu, on the other hand, stood behind the crowd and listened quietly. She had no intention of interrupting. That's right. Don't talk nonsense if you don't know. Just like Anai said, if the murderer was really after Yanemo, why didn't he just kill her? Instead, he implicated so many innocent people like us. Chamai immediately nodded at the side. Chamai was also one of Yanemo's suitors in class, and he was the most ordinary kind of suitor. Yanemo came from a good family and was beautiful. In their school, many boys wanted to catch Yanemo's attention and reach the peak of their lives. In front of others, Chamai would never say anything bad about Yanemo. He would only flatter her. If he heard someone say something bad about Yanemo behind her back, he would stand up and speak for her. Just like now, although Chamai had such a guess in his heart, he would never say it in front of others and offend Yanemo, the campus goddess. Think about it. Weren't the people who were killed first the ones who were closest to Yanemo, and then the normal students and servants? Mo Gui played the role of Puli and said in a low voice. Mo Gui's reminder reminded everyone of the first few people to be killed. Indeed, the first to die were either Yanemo's friends or her most passionate pursuers. After those guys died, it was the other people's turn. They hadn't thought of it this way before, but now that they thought about it, Puli was right. That's true, but maybe it was just a coincidence. We can't conclude that the murderer was after Yanemo just because of this, right? Anai said hesitantly. That's right. If it was really for Yanemo, why didn't that person kill Yalan? Who doesn't know that the person Yanemo loves the most is Yalan? Kashak added. I think that person is playing a game. He wants Yanemo to see the people she cares about die one by one in front of her. He also wants her to feel the fear of him being the next one to die. Sometimes, it's not scary to kill someone directly. What's scary is to live in the shadow of death. As for Yalan, if things really are as I said, then Yalan is very likely to be the next victim. Mo Gui wasn't being an alarmist. This was just one of the several hypotheses they had come up with. They all felt that it was very likely that the murderer was after Yanemo. Mingxi had already gone to protect Yalan. What Mo Gui wanted to do was to incite panic. It was fine if Yalan didn't die, but if Yalan really did die, then these people would definitely blame everything on Yanemo. When that happened, it would be much easier for them to ask questions. Although Yanemo was currently in a good position and had prestige and status among the students, in front of a threat to her life, all of this was bullshit. Mo Gui's words weren't without reason. They couldn't refute him, but how could he be so sure that the next victim would be Yalan? Even if that person really wanted to kill Yalan, who knew what the murderer was thinking? Maybe he wanted to save Yalan for last. Of course, Mo Gui wasn't just saying this casually. This was the conclusion that Ming Shi and Ajur had come up with. According to the order of death, the murderer was very happy to kill some useless passers-by and then target the few people Yanemo cared about. In a few days, she would suffer the pain of losing a friend. The people who died a few days ago were ordinary students and servants who had nothing to do with Yanemo. In a day or two at most, the murderer would make his move again. However, most of Yanemo's friends were already dead. It was impossible for her to suffer the pain of losing a friend. However, the pain of losing a husband seemed even more unbearable, especially for a girl like Yanemo who valued love above all else. For her, the deaths of a few friends would make her sad, but if it was her lover who died, then she would be in so much pain that she would rather die. Mo Gui's plan was going smoothly. He had already planted a seed in the hearts of Chamai and the others. As time passed, this seed would slowly germinate and grow. When the time came, there would be a good show to watch on Yanemo's side. Although it wasn't good to set someone up like this, Mo Gui couldn't care less. In order to leave this place alive, they had to take the risk no matter what. The next day, Feng Wu and the others welcomed a piece of good news. They finally got in touch with Diliana and the others. There were 7 people on Diliana's side. This was good news. The saying, "many hands make light work," was more in line with their current situation. As long as they worked together, they wouldn't have to worry about not being able to get out. Diliana had long suspected the identity of the Feng Wu girl, but she hadn't had a chance to test it out. It wasn't until last night that Diliana took the initiative to look for Feng Wu and called her by her real name that they were able to meet up. There were more than 10 people on both sides. Now, there were less than 30 people alive. Excluding outsiders like them, there were less than 20 people outside. Chapter 324. The two sides exchanged information and worked out a plan to catch the murderer. The plan was still in preparation. However, a rumor spread among the students, indicating that the murderer was targeting Yanemo's family, and that those who were on good terms with Yanemo were on the murderer's must-kill list. This rumor spread too fast, and soon Yanemo was pushed into the center of the storm. This rumor was very vivid, and it could withstand scrutiny. In the past, those who thought this way did not dare to say it out loud to offend Yanemo, and they did not want to be bullied by her supporters. Now, Yanemo had become the target of everyone's crusade. The originally high and mighty goddess had immediately been pulled down from the altar. Therefore, no matter what kind of goddess she was, in the face of life, who would want to have tender feelings for the fairer sex? Not to mention those who liked to support her in the first place. No matter how big the benefits were, it was not more important than life. In the face of life and benefits, everyone would know how to choose. It's all your fault. If you hadn't brought us to this island, so many of our classmates wouldn't have died. That's right. If you didn't like to pretend, we wouldn't have fallen into this situation. It's just a birthday. What's so great about it? Who hasn't celebrated before? Why do you have to go through so much trouble? Why did you call us all here? Isn't it just to show off your newly obtained island? This is great. Because of your showing off, so many of our classmates are dead. I don't know who she offended. Why did she make us suffer? I didn't do anything bad. Some of the female students were already crying as they spoke. Originally, if it was just a perverted murderer, everyone would be embarrassed to blame Yanemo. However, if the murderer was targeting Yanemo, they were just tools to scare Yanemo. They believed that everyone would feel wronged and resentful. You, how can you do this? My miss is just being kind. Weren't you all very happy when you came? Yanemo's personal little maid glared at everyone unhappily. If I had known that she had offended a murderer, I wouldn't have come no matter how many benefits she offered me. That's right. I regret it so much. And those dead students, if they knew the truth, I don't know how much they would regret it. In the hall, a group of students were arguing fiercely. Ever since Yanemo was asked to come out, they had been arguing. Yanemo thought of herself as a noble girl with a noble bloodline. She did not want to quarrel with this group of students that she looked down upon. At the same time, her heart was filled with hatred. She didn't know who had spread these rumors. They better not be caught by her. If she found out who had spread these rumors, she would definitely make that person suffer a fate worse than death. Even if that murderous demon didn't kill him, she, Yanemo, would get someone to kill that bastard who ruined her reputation. Mo Gue, he rubbed his nose. Who was scolding him? No matter what Yanemo thought in her heart, she was now hated by everyone. Her classmates, who were originally flattering her, now looked at her as if she had killed their father. Fortunately, the two teachers came forward and drove everyone back to their rooms, so this matter didn't get out of hand. Originally, the two teachers wanted to ask Yanemo alone. If this matter was really done by Yanemo's family's enemy, knowing a little about that enemy would be very helpful for them to speculate about the murderer. However, this young miss didn't cooperate. After everyone left, Yanemo said directly, "I know what you want to ask. I only have one answer. My family is a serious business, and we never make enemies outside for no reason. So it's impossible that the murderer is my family's enemy." After saying that, she didn't wait for the two teachers to respond. She turned around and went back to her room angrily. The little maid chased after her and called her young miss, but she didn't even look back. Dryo and Bellard smiled bitterly at each other. This child was still throwing a tantrum at a time like this. Couldn't she think about it carefully? Although the two teachers really wanted to find the murderer who had harmed so many people, they couldn't force their student. They could only watch as Yanemo left. Yanemo's life wasn't easy. The other person who wasn't doing well was Yalan. He was now very afraid that he would become the next target like the rumor said. From that day onwards, he didn't go anywhere except out of his room to eat. He locked himself in his room all the time. Even if someone came to find him, he wouldn't open the door. He lived a life of isolation. Another night came. The wind was strong, the clouds were dense, and the waves were rolling. A storm was coming. Late at night, a dark shadow sneaked into a room. That person looked at someone sleeping on the bed. That person calmly raised his sword and was about to stab down. Unexpectedly, another figure appeared in the room at this time. This person was Ajur. Ajur successfully blocked the sword. He casually picked up a weapon from somewhere and fought with the murderer who had shown up for the first time. Although Ajur was a fire mage, his martial arts weren't weak. He didn't lose to that person. After dozens of exchanges, that person was very smart. Seeing that he couldn't win, he crawled out of the window and tried to escape. At this time, Ming-Shi arrived and blocked that person's way. With the addition of Ming-Shi, that person in black was naturally no match for them. Soon, he was beaten by the two of them and couldn't fight back. "Let me see who you are." Ajur used his sword and successfully cut off the black cloth that the person used to cover his face. A familiar face appeared in front of the two. This person was none other than Chamai. Chamai was actually that murderer. This fact was a bit surprising. Chamai always acted like a chatterbox outside. Moreover, he was Yanemo's suitor. Who would have thought that such a boy was actually a murderer? Outside, there was a storm, thunder, and lightning. Inside, swords were drawn and bows were drawn. Chamai was under control, but there was no panic on his face. "Why did you kill them?" Ming-Shi asked. "They deserved to die." Chamai's face no longer had the usual smile. Instead, he coldly looked at Ming-Shi and Ajur. "That's not the reason why you killed them. Tell me, what's the real reason?" Ajur's fake girl looked coldly at Chamai, who was beaten to the ground, and said, "Humph." Chamai coldly snorted and turned his head away. "You're quite arrogant." Ajur kicked him in the stomach. This guy had killed so many people. Kicking him twice could be considered as collecting interest. No matter how Ajur kicked him, that person refused to say anything. He didn't say a word about the reason why he killed them. This made things difficult for Ajur and Ming Shi. They had clearly found the murderer, but that mysterious person didn't appear. This proved that they still had things to do. It seemed that before they dug out the truth, they couldn't go anywhere. Chapter 325. No matter how hard Ajur kicked him, the man refused to say anything. He didn't say a word about why he had killed those people. This made things difficult for Ajur and Ming Shi. They had already found the murderer, but that mysterious person hadn't appeared. This proved that they still had things to do. It looked like they couldn't go anywhere until they uncovered the truth. Just as the two of them were frowning, Yalan, who had been drugged and had now fainted, woke up. Yalan was a smart young man. When he realized that he might be the next target, he had taken a type of medicine in advance. This medicine could help him resist the effects of the drug. Although he still fell asleep in the end, he was able to wake up in the shortest time possible. When he woke up, Chamai had just been captured. When Ming Shi asked him the question, he guessed that Chamai was the murderer who had killed so many people. "Chamai. It's actually you. Why did you do this?" If Ming Shi and Ajur couldn't figure it out, Yalan couldn't figure out why Chamai had killed those people. "Do you want me to remind you? Half a year ago, on Matsuo Island." Chamai sneered, his eyes full of hatred. Yalan was stunned. "You're a resident of Matsuo Island." He didn't expect Chamai to be a native of Matsuo Island. "You've already guessed it, right? All of you will die. All of you will die under the curse of the gods. Those who dare to touch our clan's treasures will all die under the will of the gods." After saying those words, Chamai actually took poison and committed suicide. He died just like that in front of the three of them. Chamai was dead, but the illusion was still going on. This meant that they still couldn't leave. "Tell us, what did Chamai mean by what he said just now?" Ming Shi asked. Obviously, the truth was more complicated than they had guessed. Chamai's words contained a lot of information, and they couldn't understand the deeper meaning behind them. However, Yalan was the only one who knew. Didn't they see how pale his face was? It looked like there was a big secret hidden here. "I don't know what he's talking about. I'm going to inform the teacher to deal with Chamai's body." It was obvious that he didn't want to say anything more, so he found an excuse to leave. Ajur stopped him. "You'd better tell me. If you don't want to die, it's best to work with the big families. You may have escaped this time, but you might not be so lucky next time." Yalan took 2 steps back. "The murderer, Chamai, is already dead. There's no next time." Ajur looked at him as if he was an idiot. "You really think so? Who told you that Chamai committed the crime alone? What if he had an accomplice? Think about it, if he didn't have an accomplice, how could he die so easily?" Chamai's death was too straightforward. He did not beg for mercy, nor did he explain his motive for killing. He simply bit down on the poison in his mouth and died. When he died, his eyes were very calm. There was no unwillingness in his eyes. This was not logical. The only explanation was that he was not alone in the crime, but had other accomplices. He knew that the accomplice would help him finish what he had not done, so there was no unwillingness in his eyes. Instead, he was willing to die. Yalan was stunned for a moment, and his expression became even more unsightly. "Tell me, what's going on?" Ming Shi said. Yalan took a deep breath. He knew that if he did not tell the truth, these 2 guys would never let him go. "Come and sit down." This is a long story, so I'm afraid it will take some time to explain. Yalan motioned for Ming Shi and Ajur to follow him to the sofa. The three of them sat together. Ming Shi and Ajur looked at Yalan, indicating with their eyes that he could speak. Yalan sighed. He knew that this secret could not be hidden anymore. They had sworn to never tell anyone this secret, and now they could no longer keep this promise. It all started half a year ago. Yalan said slowly. Half a year ago, during the school holidays, Yanemo invited some of her classmates who were close to her to go out to sea. The place they went to was Matsuo Island. There were 5 villages of various sizes on Matsuo Island. The residents of the island lived and worked in peace. Although there were no strong fighters guarding the island seemed to be under the protection of a god, and no disasters happened. The residents of the island could never have imagined that a group of students who came to the island for a vacation would bring disaster to them. Although Matsuo Island was beautiful, there were no minerals. This made some strong fighters unwilling to stay on the island. However, because of the beautiful scenery, Matsuo Island attracted some people to come and play. The smart people on the island built hotels, and as the only hotel on the island, business was very good. Yalan and the others stayed in that hotel. The owner of the hotel was a kind uncle. The uncle ran the hotel with his wife and daughter and lived a happy life. On the day that Yalan and his group of 12 checked into the hotel, Yanemo and 2 other girls got up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom. They did not expect to hear a shocking conversation. The owner's daughter was naughty. She secretly took out a map from the secret room where the owner hid things. It was a map of the key to the tomb of the god of the sea. It was one of the 3 keys to open the tomb of the sea god. As long as all 3 keys were gathered, the tomb of the sea god could be opened. The owner told his daughter that this map could not be lost. He told her that she must not take it out again. They did not expect that Matsuo Island had such a big background. The purpose of its existence was to protect the key. This shocking news made Yanemo's heart beat faster. Yanemo had always been the kind of person who would get what she wanted. Since she was interested in the key, how could she let the owner keep the map? They broke into the owner's room and asked him to sell the map. The owner naturally refused. Then, the 2 sides fought. That day, there were only 12 of them in the hotel. There were no other guests. The owner's family was very ordinary. They were no match for Yanemo and the others. In the end, the map was stolen. The owner tried his best to protect the map. Yanemo did not want the news to spread, so she killed the owner's family of 3. After the owner's family died, the group of boys and girls excitedly took the map and went to get the key overnight. They entered the cave where the key was hidden and accidentally triggered a restriction. They could not step into it. At this time, another accident happened. None of them noticed that the boss's daughter was still breathing. She did not know what method she used to keep herself alive. She went out of the hotel and asked for help. She told the villagers who heard the news that the map was stolen. The villagers were furious. The key to the sea god had always been a secret of the older generation on Matsuo Island. Not many people knew about it. The map was guarded by a new owner every 3 years. They did not expect that something would happen to the owner of the hotel. Knowing that someone had stolen the map, the villagers immediately mobilized people to catch Yanemo and the others. Chapter 326. The villagers were furious. The Neptune's key had always been a secret of the older generation on Matsuo Island. Not many people knew about it, and the map would be handed over to a trustworthy family every 3 years. They didn't expect that something would happen to the owner of the inn. The 5 villages joined forces and mobilized thousands of people to hunt down Yanemo and the others. As soon as Yanemo and the others left the cave, they were chased by the villagers and almost killed. Fortunately, Yanemo's father loved her very much and spent a lot of money to hire 2 experts to protect his daughter. One of the two experts was good at using poison, while the other was good at using swords. Neither of them were good people. When they found out that something had happened to Yanemo, the two killed most of the villagers and successfully escaped from the island with Yanemo and the others. After escaping from Matsuo Island, Yanemo and the others kept quiet about the map and the key to the tomb. Even Yanemo's parents didn't know the truth. In order to make it easier to enter the island and get the key, Yanemo acted like a spoiled child to her parents and asked for the island as a birthday present. With Yanemo's parents' power, wouldn't it be easy to get an unguarded island? Although they couldn't figure out why their daughter would want an island with no minerals except for the beautiful scenery, the couple still bought Matsuo Island for their beloved daughter. Yanemo bore a grudge against the villagers who had hunted her down before. She was also afraid that they would leak the news that there was a treasure on Loosetail Island, so she bribed a group of fugitives to carry out a bloodbath on the island. All the people on the island were killed by the people sent by Yanemo. Overnight, no one was left alive on the island. This time, Yanemo came to Matsuo Island to get the key and the map of the tomb with the key. With these two things, she could get the inheritance of the Neptune and squeeze into the ranks of the top experts. Since you came to get the treasure, why did you bring so many people? If you wanted to get the treasure, shouldn't you bring as few people as possible? Why did you bring so many people? Ajur didn't believe that Yanemo and the others would do such a stupid thing. The more people they brought, the higher the chance of being discovered. He believed that Yanemo wouldn't do such a stupid thing. This. Yalan looked at the two of them awkwardly. Could it be that you brought so many people here for a purpose? Ming-Shi looked at his embarrassed expression and immediately guessed that things might not be so simple. Hurry up and tell me. The fake Ajur glared at him. She hated this kind of person who didn't finish what he was saying the most. Alright, I'll tell you. But please don't tell anyone else. If word of this gets out, I'm afraid we won't be able to live in peace. Yalan still gave in. Yanemo was the one who suggested bringing them here. In fact, after we entered this island last year, we came here twice. However, the restriction is very powerful. We can't open it with ordinary methods. Yanemo flipped through a lot of books on this subject, and finally decided to use the blood sacrifice method to forcefully open the restriction. Blood sacrifice. Heh, a woman's heart is truly the most poisonous. Ajur and Ming-Shi exchanged glances. Neither of them had expected this result. It turned out that all their deductions were wrong. The so-called blood sacrifice method was a method of using fresh blood as a sacrifice to a demon. With the power of the blood sacrifice, one could temporarily borrow the demon's power to forcefully open the restriction. However, the blood sacrifice method was very cruel. The human used as a sacrifice would be drained of blood and die. To be able to do this to her own classmates, that Yanemo was really something. So you're saying that all the murders that happened on this island were done by your group? Don't say that you had nothing to do with this. You guys discovered the location of the hidden treasure together. I don't believe that Yanemo would let you guys take advantage of her without doing anything. That woman was so vicious. He didn't believe that she was the kind of person who would let others take advantage of her. Yalan smiled bitterly. The 12 of us agreed to act together, but we weren't going to kill them directly. Instead, we were going to use drugs to knock them out and then send them to the forbidden area. Then, we were going to use the blood restriction method. However, before we could act, an accident happened. You're saying that before you could act, someone made a move first. That person kept killing the sacrifices you chose and ruined your plan? Ming-Shi's eyes darkened as he spoke calmly. Yalan nodded. That's right. He could tell that these two people weren't just ordinary guards and maids. The people Yanemo had chosen to come here weren't experts. She had originally planned to sacrifice these people as sacrifices, so how could she have chosen experts? He didn't know why these two people had sneaked in, so he could only take one step at a time. I understand. Ming Shi revealed a look of understanding. Now that all the clues had been connected, there were only a few problems that needed to be solved. Let me ask you again. Among the 12 of you who discovered the secret of Matsuo Island, who is still alive? These people who were still alive were undoubtedly on the list of people who had to die. They're all dead. Only Yanemo and I are still alive. At first, I thought that Yanemo wanted to kill us to silence us, so I secretly went to find her and quarreled with her. At that time, Yanemo flatly denied it. I didn't think that she was lying. In the end, we parted on bad terms. It wasn't until I saw Chamai today that I realized that she really didn't do it. To be honest, he'd rather it was Yanemo who did it. Rather than dealing with an unknown murderer, it was more reassuring to know the enemy. An unseen enemy was the most terrifying. Not only did they torment your consciousness, but they also tormented your heart. Only 2 of the 12 survived. It seemed that the murderer wanted to leave Yanemo until the end. As Yanemo's sweetheart, Yalan naturally wanted to die before Yanemo could experience the pain of losing a loved one. After asking all the questions that they wanted to know, Ajur and Ming Shi helped to call the others in. After hearing that Chamai had assassinated Yalan, everyone was in an uproar. No one could associate a passionate and snobbish boy like Chamai with that murderous demon. Chamai's body was carried to the center of the hall. Everyone gathered in the hall. The reason why everyone was called in was mainly to observe everyone's expressions. There must be Chamai's accomplices among these people, but the number was still unknown. It's actually Chamai. I can't believe it. Isn't he Yanemo's admirer? Why would he do such a thing? Great, the murderer has been found. We don't have to be afraid anymore. This guy is too hateful. What kind of grudge do we have with him? Why would he do this to us? It's actually this guy. I knew that he wasn't a good person. That's right. This guy is too hateful. Why wasn't I the one who killed him? My 2 sisters died at his hands. He's simply inhuman. The survivors who were still alive discussed animatedly. Their eyes were full of hatred as they looked at Chamai. They wished that they could take his body and whip it. Chapter 327. After confirming that the murderer had been executed, and that some of them had been killed by Yalan, Yalan's status in these people's hearts rose to a whole new level. Now that the murderer was dead, the survivors on the island breathed a sigh of relief. Life with a knife hanging over their heads was not easy. Without that knife hanging over their heads, everyone began to think about how to escape from Matsuo Island. All the boats on Matsuo Island had been destroyed, and all contact with the outside world had been cut off. Fortunately, Yanemo had parents who loved her very much. Yalan believed that when their daughter had not contacted them for a long time, Yanemo's parents would definitely discover that something was wrong and send people to look for her. Ming Shi did not let Yalan reveal the fact that there might be other murderers. The fact that the illusion had not stopped meant that the matter was not over yet. They still had to continue investigating. However, rather than looking for the murderer, Ming Shi decided to look for something else first, the key to the sea god's tomb. Everyone on the island had lost the ability to fight. This was not something that could be done by ordinary means, and it could not have been done by poison either. After eliminating the possibility of poison, the only possibility was that someone had used a magical tool to do it. The first thing that came to mind for a magical tool with such power on Matsuo Island was naturally the sea god's key. They wanted to confirm whether the sea god's key had been taken by someone else. If it had been, it would prove that the second murderer did indeed exist, and that he had hidden himself very well. Yalan secretly led Ming Shi and Ajur to the cave that they had fled from. Back then, the restriction in the cave had prevented them from moving forward. Furthermore, they had been repelled by the restriction, injuring each and every one of them. They had no choice but to retreat out of the cave where the key had been hidden. The entrance to the cave was very well hidden, and there were many mechanisms set up around it, completely concealing the entrance. If not for the map, Yanemo would not have been able to lead them to that place. Yalan's memory was very good. Even without the map, he still found the entrance to the cave. The mountain was not very deep. As long as they opened the mechanism and found the stone room, they would be able to find the key. By the time Ming Shi and the others found the room where the key was hidden, the restriction had clearly lost its effect. The restriction here had originally existed to protect the sea god's key. The disappearance of the restriction meant that the sea god's key was no longer in this place. As expected, there was no trace of the Neptune's key in the cave. Apart from the glowing stone wall, there was nothing else. There was also the possibility that the murderer had been confirmed. Yalan returned to the castle with Ming Shi and the others with an ugly expression. Thinking that there was still a murderer waiting to take his life, Yalan couldn't remain calm no matter what. It was another night. Ming Shi had Diliana send 2 people to guard Yalan while the others stayed in Fengwu's room to discuss what to do next. In the middle of the night, a scream pierced through the sky. Another person had died, and the one who had died was Yalan. The 2 people who had been sent to guard Yalan had also died. These 2 were the leader and vice-leader of the expedition mercenary group. The 2 of them had been killed in a single strike, while Yalan's 4 limbs had been chopped off. He had died a miserable death. When Yanemo saw Yalan's corpse, she broke down and screamed. She cried until she fainted. Seeing the boy she had always liked die in front of her, Yanemo finally couldn't take the blow. Yanemo was helped back to her room to rest. The maid carefully covered her with a blanket and quietly left the room. No one noticed that the closet in Yanemo's room slowly moved aside. Then, a secret passage appeared in the room, and a petite figure walked out. It was the figure of a woman. She couldn't be considered beautiful, but she had a gentle temperament that made people feel good at first glance. The woman held a sword in her eyes. The blade flashed coldly, revealing a cold murderous aura. The woman's eyes were filled with endless hatred. This hatred was almost tangible, as if it wanted to pierce through the woman lying on the bed. She put down the sword and used the rope she had prepared to tie up the person on the bed. Yanemo, on the other hand, was lying on the bed as if she didn't feel anything. She tied Yanemo's limbs to the bed and sealed her mouth. After doing all this, Yanemo slowly woke up. When she woke up and realized the situation she was in, she was so scared that she broke out in a cold sweat. The more one had, the more unwilling they were to die. Yanemo was like this. She had had a lot since she was young. How could she be willing to die at such a young age? She struggled with all her might, wanting to escape. No matter how hard she struggled, she couldn't escape the rope in her hands. Yanemo cried in despair. She screamed for help in her heart, but no one could hear her voice. It's useless. I originally wanted to keep you for a few more days to play, but now it seems that won't work. Someone has already begun to suspect me. I must kill you before those people find me. The woman touched the blade of her sword and smiled like an angel. However, the words she spoke were like a demon that had crawled out of hell. Although you can't continue playing, you don't have to worry. I will send everyone on the island to accompany you. Didn't you want them all to die from the beginning anyway? The woman giggled. Her smile was like a lily stained with blood. Yanemo shook her head desperately. She couldn't believe that she even knew about her plan. No, how was that possible? Apart from the 12 of them, no one else could know about this. Are you wondering how I know? Woo! Yanemo couldn't make a sound. She could only whimper. There are secret passages everywhere in this castle. What secret can I not know? It's strange, isn't it? Why are there so many secret passages in this castle? Have you forgotten? You personally designed this castle. I just made some changes when I sent the design to you. The moonlight shone on the woman's face. This woman was actually one of Yanemo's servants. Although she wasn't a trusted aide, she wasn't a random passerby either. Seeing Yanemo's face filled with sadness, fear, despair, and pleading, the woman was in a good mood. She played with the sword in her hand. Before Yanemo could react, she swung her sword and cut off Yanemo's arm. The intense pain made her want to scream. Unfortunately, her mouth was gagged. She couldn't scream even if she wanted to. She could only endure the pain of losing her arm. The despair in her eyes deepened. Blood spurted out from her severed arm. Most of the bed was dyed red with blood. Blood dripped onto the floor drop by drop. Soon, the floor was covered in blood. Does it hurt? When you killed the villagers of Somway Island, did you think about how much pain they were in? The woman seemed to have thought of something. Her eyes were filled with madness. Chapter 328. Don't be afraid. It won't hurt anymore. I'll cut off your limbs and then your head. You'll be able to see your lover soon. Aren't you happy? Don't you love him very much? I'm sure you won't mind dying with him. No, I don't want to. I don't want to die. Yanemo screamed in her heart. Unfortunately, no one could hear her. Yanemo loved herself the most. She was indeed sad that Yalan was dead, but she never thought of dying for love. She wasn't the kind of person who would willingly die for a man. As long as there was a glimmer of hope, she would live on even if she had to betray the world. This was Yanemo, a selfish woman. The woman who spoke slowly chopped off Yanami's limbs. Just as she was about to chop off Yanami's head, a small hand suddenly appeared and grabbed her sword-wielding hand. It's over. I caught you. Fengwu's voice was filled with joy. As soon as they realized that Yalan might be the target, they split up. Some people guarded Yalan while others watched Yanemo. Fengwu was the one who protected Yanemo. Diliana was the other, but Diliana had called for help. Why are you here? The woman was shocked. Shouldn't everyone be gathered around Yalan to discuss the murderer? She knew that the two teachers had gathered a lot of people for a meeting. If she didn't know that no one would get in the way at this time, she wouldn't have chosen this time to act. I've been here the whole time. You just didn't see me. The Fengwu girl's lips curved, and her eyes flashed with joy. Senior Mingxi had said that everything would be over once the culprit was caught. Fengwu didn't like staying here at all. She wanted to leave as soon as possible. This girl had worked very hard to catch the culprit. The Fengwu girl had been hiding in the dark, guarding Yanemo. Her mission wasn't to protect Yanemo, but to find the other murderer. She didn't expect the murderer to make a move at this time. Although Diliana went to ask for help and she was alone here, she wasn't afraid. Instead, she was a little excited. In fact, she could have taken action when the murderer came in, but Diliana said that Yanemo was not a good person. She wanted to teach her a lesson, as long as she didn't die. Fengwu girl agreed obediently and asked Diliana to find Mingxi and the others for help. She was responsible for guarding Yanemo and keeping her alive. Mind your own business. The woman used her other hand to slap away Fengwu's hand that was grabbing her arm. Fengwu also used her free hand to slap her palm. Both of them took a step back and separated their hands. You're courting death. The woman stabbed her sword at Fengwu. To her, anyone who tried to stop her from taking revenge must die. Fengwu also had a sword in her hand. Of course, it wasn't the small sword she usually used. It was a self-defense weapon she found in the castle. She knew this girl named Zhen. This girl was not conspicuous in Yanemo's class, and her strength was average. How could she use such a fast sword? The woman was shocked, but she didn't dare to be careless. She raised her sword to meet the attack. Without the support of fighting power, it was a competition of strength and endurance. Fengwu could defeat her in any of these three aspects. Sure enough, after a few moves, the woman's sword was knocked away by Fengwu's sword. At this time, Ming Shi and the others arrived. They surrounded the woman. It's her. Isn't she Yanemo's maid? Why did she kill her? The people behind saw the murderer on the ground and Yanemo, who was lying on the bed and obviously tortured beyond recognition. Their eyes were filled with sorrow. Who would have thought that the indomitable Yanemo would end up like this? God! Yanemo! It's terrible. How did she end up like this? It's so cruel. How can there be such a vicious person? Stop talking. No one can be more vicious than Miss Yanemo. A juror stood out and pointed at Yanemo. When the crowd saw that it was Yanemo's maidservant who stood out, they were all shocked. What was going on? What happened to Yanemo's maidservants? They either tried to assassinate her or stood out to accuse her. What did she do that made her so unpopular? How dare you, Fong and I? How dare you talk about the master? The steward shouted. In his heart, 10 people were wondering why this honest maid would do such a thing that offended her superiors. A juror rolled his eyes. Damn you, Fong and I. Your whole family is called Fong and I. Are you sure you don't want to check on your master's injuries first? Aren't you afraid that she'll die from blood loss? While complaining in his heart, a juror told him everything about how Yanemo had inhumanely slaughtered everyone on the island. He even told him about how Yanemo had planned to use everyone as sacrificial offerings. When the truth was revealed, Yanemo and the others changed. They gradually faded and then disappeared. Except for Ming Shi and the other outsiders, Yanemo's classmates and maids on the island all disappeared. Before they disappeared, their expressions and gazes changed. They became weary and relieved. Thank you. Thank you for letting us know the truth. Thank you. Everyone, including the 2 teachers, thanked Ming Shi and the others. The murderer on the ground stood up. His eyes were clear, and the hatred in his eyes had decreased a lot. It's been 100 years. Finally, someone has uncovered the truth. I don't have anything else to give you, but I'll give you the key of the sea god. This key has the divine power of the sea god. With it, you won't be afraid of any waves. I won't be giving you the map of the sea god's tomb. It's not a place where mortals can go. A key that was flashing with a grass blue light flew out of Ming Shi's hand. It circled around Ming Shi and the others, and finally chose to land in Ming Shi's hand. After saying these words, everyone disappeared, leaving behind an empty castle. Not long after those people disappeared, the mysterious man's voice finally sounded. Congratulations. You've completed the mission I gave you. The truth of 100 years ago has been revealed. Who the hell are you? Ajur and the others had returned to their original forms. Even the strength that had been restrained was restored. With strength, they were confident that they could deal with this mysterious man. I'm just a ball of resentment. A ball of resentment that's about to disappear. The mysterious man's voice sounded again. Chapter 329. I'm just a ball of resentment that's about to disappear. The mysterious man's voice was heard again. Resentment? Funwu looked confused, and so did everyone else. If you don't understand, you can see me as someone's obsession. 100 years ago, a tragedy happened on this island that shocked many countries. Yanemo Gontan, who came to Matsuo Island for a vacation, and all the servants, classmates, and teachers on the island died on this island. 100 years ago, the only daughter of the Gontan family, Yanemo, invited all her classmates to her new island for a vacation. In the end, 2 months passed, and she didn't contact her family even once. Mr. and Mrs. Gontan were worried about their beloved daughter, so they sent their servants to look for her. In the end, the servants disappeared as soon as they set foot on the island. In order to find their daughter, Mr. and Mrs. Gontan ignored the servants' objections and insisted on going to the island to look for their daughter. Of course, they never returned. The three masters of the Gontan family disappeared, and the Gontan family, which was originally famous in the sea world, quickly declined. Even their property was taken over by Mrs. Gontan's family, the Bohai Kingdom's royal family. Because no one who set foot on this island could leave alive, this island quickly became the legendary Island of Death, a forbidden area where no human could set foot. How did those who set foot on the island die? You didn't kill them, did you? Ajur asked curiously. Of course not. They died from a strong resentment. The mysterious man's voice was slightly angry. Back then, Yanemo slaughtered all the villagers on the island for her own selfish desires. The strong resentment of the villagers when they died was originally sealed by the masters that Yanemo sent out. Later, in order to seek revenge, the survivor of the village used the power of the Neptune's key on the island to make the people on the island lose their powers and become ordinary people. She then used the secret passage in the castle to kill everyone. Once again, she used the power of the Neptune's key to save the souls of all the villagers. However, she didn't expect that the souls of the villagers had already been infected by the resentment, turning them into evil spirits that only knew how to kill. After the seal was undone, she was immediately killed by the evil spirits that swarmed out. None of the living creatures on the island survived. They were all killed by the evil spirits. Since then, what happened on this island and why Matsuo Island became an island of death has become a complete mystery. No one knows the answer anymore. How come we have never seen a villager who has turned into an evil spirit? According to the mysterious man, this island should be full of evil spirits, but they had been here for so long, and except for Yanemo and the others, they had not seen any evil spirits at all. Mo Gue was very curious. Where did the villagers who had turned into evil spirits go? Why couldn't he see any of them? You're not even in the same space, so of course you can't see them. That mysterious person said again. Not in the same space. Ming Shi raised his eyebrows in surprise. He didn't expect that this was the reason why they couldn't see the villagers. That's right. Not long after the Gaodon's accident, the Bohai Kingdom invited 3 powerful magicians to this island. One of them was a necromancer and a spatial magician. That magician was very powerful. After the other 2 magicians came to the island, they died because they couldn't use their magic. Only he survived. Not only did he survive, but he also used his super strength to separate the space, trapping all the necromancers in the outer space of the island. The castle on the mountain was opened up into another space. He separated the souls of the 2 spaces and let them live in their own spaces. After the magician successfully separated the spaces, he wanted to enter the castle on the mountain to find out the truth. However, the great magician didn't expect that the castle on the mountain would become a very dangerous place. Although all the souls in the castle didn't turn into evil spirits, they weren't much better off. They were trapped here, repeating everything from when they came to the island to when they were killed. Even the magician was pulled into their midst and had no choice but to play a role. Later on, the magician was killed, and his soul was trapped on the island forever, unable to leave. The magician's soul wanted to enter the castle to find out what had happened. Unfortunately, he couldn't enter the castle anymore. He wanted to know what had happened that year too much. His resentment and obsession formed me. From the moment I formed my consciousness, I knew that my mission was to uncover the truth behind the deaths of everyone in the castle, as well as the reason why those vengeful spirits were born in the other space at the foot of the mountain. Although I really wanted to investigate it myself, I was just a mass of resentment and obsession. I wasn't a real soul, so I couldn't participate in it to understand the truth. In the past 100 years, I've met many people who were accidentally stranded on the island. They all wanted to find out the truth and leave this place. However, those people all died on the island and became evil spirits like those people. As for the few of you, I don't know if you're lucky or unlucky. You actually encountered the black whirlwind that only appears once every 100 years. The black whirlwind has a mysterious power that can interfere with the energy field of all living creatures. Your souls were already very weak because of the interference of the energy field, and because of the power of the Neptune's key, you were sucked into this island. If you're lucky, you were sucked into the island of death. If you're unlucky, you're many times luckier than those living creatures who died directly under the black whirlwind. Now that the truth of the matter has surfaced, all the souls here don't have to repeat the tragedy that happened 100 years ago. Their souls can all be reincarnated. No wonder that girl gave you the Neptune's key. If it weren't for you, they would have to repeat everything and might never be able to reincarnate. Even the mysterious man couldn't help but admire their good luck. In the past 100 years, many experts had died on the island. Some died when they were just one step away from the truth. However, Ming Shi and the others had clearly entered the island with their souls, but they still survived. Their luck was simply too good. Let's not talk about it anymore. My mission is complete, and I'm about to disappear. The island is no longer shrouded by the power of the Neptune's key. As long as you close your eyes and think about returning to your bodies, you can immediately return. However, I hope you can promise me one thing. After you return, remember to find a necromancer and ask him to find a way to purify the villagers' resentment. If they can't reincarnate, they won't be able to reincarnate. The mysterious man let out a long sigh. Don't worry, we'll find a way to purify the souls of those villagers. Ajur glanced at the Fengwu girl. With Fengwu around, purifying those villagers would be a matter of minutes. Chapter 330. The mysterious man let out a long sigh, his voice filled with infinite melancholy. Don't worry, we'll find a way to purify the souls of those villagers. Ajur glanced at the Fengwu girl. With Fengwu around, purifying those villagers would be a piece of cake. Although this guy killed people viciously without blinking an eye, there was a good side to him. He still knew how to save the souls of those villagers. Then I'm relieved. You guys can go now. Be careful in the future and don't be so unlucky again. After saying this, the mysterious man's voice completely disappeared. The mysterious man disappeared. Apart from the faint sound of the waves, there was no other sound. Goodbye, everyone. We'll be leaving first. Diliana smiled and waved at everyone. In the blink of an eye, her body gradually faded and disappeared before everyone's eyes. Then, Diliana's female guard, Mia, also disappeared before everyone's eyes. Goodbye. Ming Shi looked at Fengwu, then at the other teammates. Ajur and the others nodded knowingly, and the figures of Ming Shi team also gradually disappeared before everyone's eyes. An inexplicable light flashed in the eyes of the remaining people. With a flash of light, they all disappeared from the castle on Death Island. At this time, a burst of surprised cheers came from Sheldman's ship. You're awake, you're awake. Xiao Wu, you're finally awake. Margaret almost cried tears of joy. God knew how worried she was these 2 days. She thought that if Fengwu didn't wake up, she would contact the people of Notre Dame du Starlight to deal with it. Fortunately, Fengwu finally woke up. At the same time, there was a burst of exclamations in another room. Matson didn't expect to see Ming Shi and the others wake up. He thought they would never wake up again. You guys are finally awake. If you didn't wake up, Margaret and I would have had no choice but to contact the teachers in your school to think of a solution. Matson said, half rejoicing and half vexed. Ming Shi, Ajur, and the others, who had been sleeping for several days, finally woke up. Sherman, who had rushed over after hearing the news, exclaimed in disbelief. He had never heard of anyone coming out of Death Island alive, not to mention that they had entered the island with their souls. It was even more dangerous than entering the island with their bodies. He did not expect them to come back alive under such dangerous circumstances. It was simply inconceivable. Matson introduced Sheldman to Ming Shi and the others. Sheldman couldn't wait to ask about their encounter on Death Island. Ming Shi and the others didn't hide anything. They explained everything from beginning to end. They only hid the matter of the Neptune's key. They didn't mention anything else that could be said. No matter what, Sheldman was their savior. If Sheldman hadn't protected their bodies during this period of time, they would have become true undead. After knowing what had happened, Sheldman exclaimed in disbelief. This old man had never thought that the truth of 100 years ago would be like this. Mo Faley's friends, Myron and Twain, didn't wake up at the same time. Their souls had been harmed when they were on the island. After their souls were shattered, their bodies naturally stopped breathing. As early as 2 days ago, the two of them stopped breathing. Thus, Sheldman already knew that their souls were shattered. Sheldman had already ordered people to carry their corpses away. When he contacted their families, he would hand their corpses over to them. After Fengwu woke up, the first thing she did was to contact Xiaochun. Xiaochun's cute voice immediately came from Li Zhong. "Master, what's the matter?" "Xiaochun, go purify the wraiths on the island." Fengwu girl still had that expressionless face, but her voice was as soft as cotton candy. "Really? Master, that's great. There's something to eat." Xiaochun excitedly cheered and flew out of Fengwu girl's dantian. Then, with a flash of white light, Xiaochun had already flown into Death Island. After the upgrade, Xiaochun's intelligence had become higher and higher. Now, he could talk to Fengwu girl normally, although his intelligence was only about 4 or 5 years old. When Xiaochun came back again, his entire body was covered in a layer of white light. He excitedly flew around Fengwu girl, then entered Fengwu girl's dantian to continue nourishing. As a necromancer, Sheldman had already noticed when the wraiths on Death Island disappeared. He was curious about who had purified the wraiths, but he didn't say much. He just thought that it was a necromancer like him who couldn't bear to see the wraiths suffer from the wraiths, so he purified the wraiths. After their souls returned to their bodies, Ming Shi and the others rested for another 2 days before continuing on their journey. Ever since they picked up Ming Shi and the others, the ship had never left Loose Tail Island. Sheldman always liked to stand at the bow of the ship, as if reminiscing about something. Margaret originally thought that Sheldman didn't set sail because of Ming Shi and the others, but after seeing Sheldman's behavior, she realized that she was completely wrong. He was staying here to reminisce about old friends. According to Sheldman's grandson, Baser, 100 years ago, Sheldman's good friend entered this island and never came back. Every year at this time, Sheldman would stay near Loose Tail Island for a period of time to reminisce about old friends. Ming Shi and the others were just lucky to come across the day when Sheldman was reminiscing about old friends. Sheldman's ship was also heading toward Falling Jade Island. Recently, the news of the sea god's tomb near Falling Jade Island had spread like wildfire. Who knew how many experts were rushing there? After wasting so many days, they were afraid that they were already behind. However, the people on the ship weren't in a hurry. Ming Shi looked at the key-shaped metal object in his hand, a trace of deep thought flashing through his eyes. "Senior Ming Shi, we have no choice but to go to the sea god's tomb now, right?" Mo Gui giggled. He was overjoyed to be able to explore the sea god's tomb. Originally, Ming Shi didn't want them to go, but now that they had the key, if they didn't go, they wouldn't be able to open the sea god's tomb. Ming Shi glanced at him indifferently, but didn't refute. They had no choice but to go now. They clearly didn't want to get involved in the matter of the sea god's tomb, but because they had obtained one of the 3 keys, they had no choice but to go. It felt like they were being forced to do something beyond their abilities. Ajur and Riot didn't mind, especially Ajur, who loved to fight. He wanted to have a good fight in the sea god's tomb. Yaya. Ever since Feng Yi was released from his mother's ring, he had almost become a chatterbox. No matter what others said, he would yell a few times to make his presence known. The little thing felt wronged. After being locked up for so many days, when he came out, he was like a mountain flood. His cries lasted for a full 4 hours. Those who didn't know better would think that someone was abusing a child. Chapter 331. After being locked up in the small black room for a few days, the little thing was full of resentment and wanted to show his existence. "Oh, look, our little Yi also wants to go to the tomb of the god of sin, right?" Ajur pinched the little guy's soft cheeks and teased him with a smile. "Go. Go." Little Yi didn't know what the tomb of the god of sin was. He thought that Ajur was playing with him and happily clung to him. As he spoke, a few drops of saliva dripped down. Ming-Shi helplessly wiped little Ye's saliva with a handkerchief. "Hug. Daddy. Hug." The little guy didn't understand what daddy meant, but his mother said that Ming-Shi would be his daddy, so when the little guy saw Ming-Shi, he called him daddy, regardless of whether he was willing or not. Fengwu, who was holding little Bun, directly put him in Ming-Shi's arms. Ever since the little guy came out, he had been sticking to Fengwu. He didn't even let little White carry him. He clung to Fengwu all day long and wouldn't come down no matter what. Ming-Shi expressed his helplessness under the ambiguous gazes of the others. He didn't know if this little guy learned from his mother to want him to be a father so much. She took Xiaoyi from him and fed him some egg custard under the little Bun's instructions. This was something that Margaret had specially asked the kitchen to make. The little guy was too likable, so the fat chef in the kitchen didn't mind making something for the little guy. With one hand holding the little guy and sitting on a chair, and the other holding a spoon to feed the steamed bun, it was simply the image of a good father. "I'm afraid that this trip to the tomb of the god of sin won't be peaceful. Everyone, be careful," Ming-Shi said as he fed little Bun. This trip to the tomb of the sea god was unavoidable. There were several people who knew that the key was in their hands. If they didn't go, everyone would spare no effort to find them. Ming-Shi was a little annoyed. If he had known, he wouldn't have taken the key. It seemed that he had gotten himself into trouble. "Why are you being so serious, Senior Ming-Shi? We've been out at sea for so long, but we haven't had the chance to have a good time. Since Falling Jade Island is famous for its abundance of products, why don't we take a look around after we disembark? Xiao Wu, do you want new clothes? Let's go buy them together after we disembark," Ajur said, bringing Fengwu into the conversation. Fengwu tilted her head. "I have a lot of clothes. Most of them were bought for her by Ajur, and some were made by Madame Lan the last time she went home. Even if she wore one piece of clothing a day, it would be enough for her to wear for 3 months. Because there were too many clothes, the Fengwu girl was not interested in Ajur's suggestion to buy clothes. "Then I'll take you to eat good food. There are many famous delicacies on Falling Jade Island. You'll definitely like them," Ajur said as he put his arm around Fengwu's shoulders. "Good food." The Fengwu girl's eyes lit up. "Let's go. Let's go to Falling Jade Island." Everyone fell silent. "Young lady, you're too easy to trick." After discussing the trip to the tomb of the sea god, everyone rested peacefully on the ship for the next few days. When they had time, they would play some fishing, quietly waiting for the day to arrive at Falling Jade Island. What Ming-Shi and the others didn't know was that a merchant ship had already arrived not far from Falling Jade Island. A slightly plump merchant and a bodyguard disembarked from the ship. These two were Hart and Ollie. Behind the two of them were a group of bodyguards and servants. These people were hired by Hart from other places. His original subordinates had been swept away by the black whirlwind. Who knew how many of them were still alive? He might as well buy more people to serve him. Although Hart had lost a ship in this black whirlwind incident, he had kept all his goods. Hart also had spatial equipment on him. Before Black Whirlwind arrived, he had cleared out all the things he didn't use in his spatial equipment, leaving enough space to store his goods. Hart brought Ollie to a hotel with a good environment. After entering the hotel room, Ollie walked behind him and closed the door, standing respectfully to the side. "Master. Send someone to keep an eye on the port. Report to me as soon as you see Ming-Shi and the others disembark." Hart poured himself a glass of wine. He swirled the glass and took a deep breath of the wine's aroma. "Yes, I'll do it right away," Ollie replied. "Tell the people below to be more efficient." "Don't get caught," Hart said worriedly. Ollie nodded fiercely and turned to leave to do his work. Not long after Ollie left, there was a knock on the door. Hart stood up and walked to the door. When he opened the door, he saw a woman in a cloak standing outside. The woman had a large cloak over her body, covering her graceful figure. She wore a veil hat on her head. The hat was covered with a thick black veil. The black veil fell down to the woman's buttocks, covering her face completely. Hart didn't seem to be surprised by the woman's dress. He stepped aside and let the woman in. After the woman entered the room, he looked around to make sure no one was watching before closing the door. Once the door was closed, he walked to the window and pulled all the curtains. The originally bright room became dark. The woman lit the candle and then took off the veil hat on her head, revealing a charming and exquisite face. "Why are you only here now? Your efficiency is too low." The woman's voice seemed to have a hint of seduction. She took off her cloak, revealing a blue dress that exposed half of her breasts. Coupled with the woman's delicate facial features, she seemed to have the elegance and charm of a noble. "I encountered Black Whirlwind on the way. That's why I'm late." Hart sat opposite the woman. He didn't seem to be interested in the woman's hot body and beautiful face at all. Hearing this, the woman played with a lock of her hair with interest. "Then you're really lucky. Nothing happened to you." "I'm fine, but Amok and Mezen are both dead." Hart's tone was flat, as if he was talking about a neighbor's dog. This cold and emotionless look was completely different from the forthright and generous person he showed in front of others. "Those two guys are actually dead." The woman raised her eyebrows in surprise, but then shrugged indifferently. "Forget it. Useless trash. If they're dead, then they're dead. The third key has appeared. It's in the hands of a young man named Ming Shi. If there's no Italian food, that young man should arrive at Falling Jade Island in 2 days at most." Hearing that the third key had appeared, the woman's expression finally changed. It actually appeared so soon. It seems that the day of the opening of the sea god's tomb is getting closer and closer. Take this key. When the day of the opening of the sea god's tomb, take it out. The woman casually threw a key. If Ming Shi were here, he would definitely notice that this key was exactly the same as the one in his hand. Chapter 332. Hart fiddled with the key in his hand for a moment before putting it into his spatial ring. "You vampires clearly have no use for the inheritance, so why are you so interested in the sea god's tomb?" Hart asked indifferently. "Don't worry about that. Just do what I've told you and don't need to know too much about other things." The woman glanced at Hart coldly. Hart turned his head away upon hearing this and didn't ask any more questions. However, no one knew what he was thinking. Ming Shi didn't know that someone had already set their sights on him before he even arrived. 2 days later, Sherman's ship finally sailed into Falling Jade Island. Falling Jade Island was different from Three Leaf Island. Three Leaf Island had beautiful scenery but no minerals. Apart from being a scenic spot, it had no other use. Falling Jade Island, on the other hand, was rich in mineral resources. Moreover, a city had already been built on the island. There were all kinds of shops and inns in the city. Many businessmen from other islands had specially come to Falling Jade Island to buy a house and start a small business here. Sherman and his granddaughter had been directly invited by the island master, so they would visit the island master's residence and might even stay there. Ming Shi and the others didn't plan to meet the island master. After bidding farewell to Sherman and his granddaughter, Ming Shi's group of 5, along with Margaret and Margaret, found an inn to rest in after entering the city. Due to the appearance of the sea god's tomb, many of the inns on Falling Jade Island were already full. It wasn't easy for them to find 3 empty rooms in a small, run-down inn. Because there weren't many rooms, everyone had to squeeze in and make do. Some of the later arrivals had to buy tents to spend the night outside. Compared to those people, Ming Shi and the others who managed to get the last 3 rooms were considered very lucky. There were 7 of them. Except for Fengwu and Margaret, the rest were all men, so the 2 girls were assigned to 1 room, and the other 2 rooms were shared by the 5 boys. Margaret wasn't the least bit concerned about how the boys were going to split their rooms. She pulled Fengwu along and headed out. She had long wanted to explore the shops on Falling Jade Island. Now that so many people had come to Falling Jade Island, there was bound to be a lot of good stuff. If she didn't take a look, what if the good stuff was already bought by others? Ming Shi and the others didn't stop them. They just told them to be careful and not to cause trouble, and let them go. He pulled Fengwu out of the inn. The streets were filled with people and the sound of hawking. It was simply too lively. Jade Fall Island was rich in minerals, and some of the ores that could only be found on the island were sold in small stalls. Take a look, take a look. That's Fallen Jade Island specialty, the yellow spring stone. It's a top-grade material for crafting magical weapons. Don't miss it. Heavenly star grass, sea lingji, water ginseng. There's all kinds of top-grade herbs here. It'll be a pity to miss it. Pearl powder, beautify and nourish your skin. Apply it on your face every day and you'll never age. Clothes for sale, Falling Jade Island specialty clothes. If you don't buy one, you'll be too embarrassed to say that you're here. There were people hawking their wares on the streets, selling all kinds of things. It was too much for the eyes to take in. Margaret looked left and right, going from one stall to another. It didn't take long for her to buy a bunch of things. Fortunately, she had spatial equipment, so she didn't have to carry all kinds of bags on her. Fengwu stayed by Margaret's side the whole time, but didn't buy anything. The 2 girls didn't know that there was a group of people glaring at them from the 2nd floor of the inn opposite them. Big brother, that's the white-haired boy who was with that girl. He killed Elder Xiaocheng. We met him alone this time. We must kill that girl and let that white-haired boy know the power of the Lianya clan. That's right, that's right. If we don't kill her, we won't be able to vent our anger. There was a group of young men and women sitting here. The oldest among them was in his 30s, while the youngest was about the same age as Fengwu. This group of people was from the Lianya clan. This time, the Lianya clan had sent their experts over, hoping to get a share of the loot when the sea god's tomb opened. As for these juniors, they were only brought out to gain experience and broaden their horizons. The Lianya clan's true experts weren't them. Previously, outside the sea god's tomb, Skycliff had killed Elder Xiaocheng with a single slash. He had already formed an irreconcilable grudge with the Lianya clan. At that time, many people had seen Fengwu with Skycliff. Since they couldn't find Skycliff, they naturally wanted to start with Fengwu. One shouldn't forget that the Lianya clan and the Idori clan had joined forces to issue a huge bounty quest to the various large guilds. Ever since Xiaocheng's death, not a single member of the Lianya clan had shown up. If not for the various large guilds' bounty quests still being posted, Ming Shi and the others would have long since forgotten about this matter. Speaking of the bounty quest for Skycliff, quite a few people had accepted it. Unfortunately, those who had fought with Skycliff had either died or been crippled. The various large guilds had long since classified this quest as an S-rank or above quest. It couldn't be helped. Practically everyone who had accepted this quest had died. Only high-leveled adventurers had a chance of completing such a difficult quest. If they allowed ordinary adventurers to casually accept this quest, even more people would die. Fengwu didn't know any of this. At this moment, she was obediently following Margaret. The 2 girls were eating street snacks together on the street. Falling Jade Island's grilled seafood was one of the best. Many adventurers who came to this place would choose to try this local specialty. Fengwu held a grilled fish in her left hand and a grilled squid in her right. Her mouth was dripping with oil as she ate. After finishing the skewers, the two young ladies decided to go to a ready-made clothing store to pick out 2 sets of Falling Jade Island specialties. It would be a souvenir when they returned. The two of them walked side by side into the clothing store. The business of this store was obviously very good. There were at least a dozen women looking at clothes in the store. The owner and the shop assistants were all busy taking out clothes for the customers and trying on clothes. They were so busy that their feet almost didn't touch the ground. "Ladies, please come in. These are the new designs that were rushed out overnight yesterday. Feel free to take a look. Let me know if you like something and I'll help you get it immediately." The staff in the store took some time out of his busy schedule to greet them. "All right, we'll take a look ourselves. You can go ahead with your work." Margaret nodded and sent the staff away. The staff naturally left after thanking them profusely. He was so busy that he wished he could grow 2 more pairs of hands. How could he refuse a customer who was willing to take a look? Fengwu and Margaret each chose a set of clothes and paid the shop owner. The two of them kept the clothes in their spatial equipment and left the store. Chapter 333. Who knew that as soon as the two became famous, they bumped into a girl next to them. The girl's newly bought clothes fell to the ground. After the girl took 2 steps back and steadied herself, she immediately realized that her newly bought clothes had fallen. Her expression changed and her gaze became even more unfriendly. "I'm sorry." Fengwu was a good girl. Seeing that she bumped into someone and saw that the girl's clothes had fallen to the ground, she immediately helped the girl pick up the clothes and took the initiative to admit her mistake. "Do you think an apology is enough? My clothes are newly bought. How are you going to compensate me for dirtying it?" The girl said without beating around the bush. "I'll help you wash it." Fengwu looked at the girl and said seriously. "Wash what? I haven't even worn these clothes once and you want to wash them." The girl said angrily. "How much did you buy these clothes for? We'll give you money." Margaret couldn't stand it anymore and said forcefully. "Straightforward. These clothes aren't expensive. You can at least give me this much." As she said this, she stretched out 5 fingers. 50 gold coins. Fortunately, it was acceptable. "What 50 gold coins? It's 5,000. The girl curled her lips in disdain. 5,000. Why don't you go rob a bank?" Margaret was furious when she heard this. Just now, it was clearly this girl who had taken the initiative to bump into Fengwu. She had done it on purpose. She wanted 5,000 gold coins. Dream on. He would rather use the 5,000 gold coins to help the poor than give it to this girl. "You ruined my clothes. So what if you don't want to pay me money?" The girl shouted loudly and immediately, the nearby residents gathered around. Why is it her again? This is the 3rd time this month. Every time she uses this method to extort money. Is there anything new? So that girl is a habitual offender. Isn't that right? Who doesn't know her on this street? She specializes in extorting money from outsiders. Moreover, every time she chooses a target, she can get money from them 9 times out of 9. These 2 girls are really unlucky. They actually bumped into this girl. "Bro, you guys have been talking for a long time. Who is that woman? Tell me clearly. I don't want to be tricked by her in the future." A guy who was watching the show had been listening to them. The more he listened, the more he couldn't help it. Finally, he decided to stand up and find out the true face of the female swindler. He didn't want to be cheated of all his money by a female swindler before he even entered the tomb of the gods. "You don't even know her. This woman is the younger sister of the Vice Island Master's favorite, Si Ningtu. She's used to being a tyrant in the city. Not to mention you outsiders, even us natives have been bullied by her several times. So that's how it is. I'll definitely avoid her in the future. I don't want to be scolded. That brother patted his chest. He was just a small fry who wanted to take advantage of the situation. He wasn't like those experts with status who could look down on this woman. The crowd whispering to each other didn't seem to be bothered by the greedy woman at all. This woman's name was Barlett, and she was his sister. Just as they said, she was a popular woman under the Vice Island Master. Because of her relationship with her sister, she'd made a name for herself in the past 2 years. Very few people didn't give her face. Over time, this girl's self-confidence had swelled, and she'd started to take advantage of this opportunity to extort money. Moreover, the people she'd set her eyes on were all outsiders who'd come to Falling Jade Island. Why won't you pay? Why don't you find out who our young miss is? If you dare to make our young miss suffer, don't even think about leaving Falling Jade Island in peace. There was a slightly chubby maid next to Barlett. When the girl heard Margaret's words, she immediately narrowed her eyes and curled her lips, looking as if her eyes had grown on top of her head. As expected, like master, like servant. Is your young miss the daughter of the island master? How come I've never heard of the island master having a daughter? Margaret pretended to cover her mouth in surprise and said with a look of surprise. Barlett's face reddened, and the onlookers burst into muffled laughter when they heard this. Our young miss is the woman of the Vice Island Master's favorite, Lord Spartan. If you don't want to offend the Vice Island Master, pay up immediately. The chubby maid said fiercely to Margaret. Never heard of him. Funwu thought for a moment. When she'd gotten off the ship, Sherman had told them about the people they should pay attention to on Falling Jade Island. However, Spartan wasn't one of them, so she replied honestly. You dare to look down on Lord Spartan? You two little bitches are courting death. Barlett bit out that they looked down on Spartan. She'd made up her mind to teach them a lesson. It made sense. Ever since Barlett's older sister had successfully taken over, she'd never suffered in front of anyone. Today, she'd suffered such a huge loss in front of Funwu and Margaret. How could she swallow this anger? Don't you know how to listen to people? The two of us don't even know who this Spartan you're talking about is. How can we look down on him? Margaret rolled her eyes. You won't shed tears until you see the coffin. Men, attack. Barlett couldn't be bothered to argue with Margaret anymore. These two women dared to not give her face, so they shouldn't blame her for being impolite. They were just two adventurers who came to join in the fun. How dare they offend Lord Spartan's future sister-in-law? If she didn't teach them a lesson, they wouldn't know what it meant to be a strong dragon couldn't suppress a snake in its old haunts. This girl already saw herself as Spartan's future sister-in-law. She didn't even think about whether he was willing to marry her older sister. At Barut's command, 5 burly swordsmen suddenly appeared around her. These people were assigned to her by Barut's sister. It had become a habit for Baruta to bring these people along to show off. If she didn't like someone, she would let them fight. One by one, they would fight. Unfortunately, she was destined to kick an iron plate today. The 5 burly men raised their swords and rushed forward. However, before they could do anything, Funwu used her windward willow leaf steps and instantly appeared beside them. Her slender fingers tapped them, and they couldn't move at all. Only their eyes could still move. You. What did you do to them? Barlett was shocked and scared. In the end, she only dared to show off in front of small people. She didn't dare to provoke a real master. Did you see how the girl attacked? The onlookers asked excitedly. No, it's too fast. This girl's body movement must be at least an intermediate level body movement. Those ordinary body movement can't be so fast. It's over. This time, Barlett kicked an iron plate. I didn't expect that this girl who looks so weak is actually an expert. This voice was really gloating. That's right. Finally, someone can teach this woman a lesson. Last time, she came to my shop and ordered a table of dishes. In the end, she didn't give a penny. She extorted so much money from outsiders all day long, but she wasn't even willing to pay for the food. What kind of person is she? The one who spoke was the owner of the restaurant opposite. He hated Bartlett's behavior of eating and dashing at his house. Chapter 334. Although Bartlett was domineering on the island and seemed to like to take advantage of others, she was actually a little smart. For example, she never dared to eat and dash in the big restaurants on the island. These big restaurants had the support of big figures behind them, and Bartlett still had some self-awareness. Every time she took advantage of people, she would go to small shops or small people with no background. She never provoked people with a little background. This was also the reason why she could run rampant on the island for more than 2 years without being taught a lesson. Don't talk about it. The last time she went to my shop to eat noodles, what do you think? She said that there were too few side dishes in the noodles and insisted that I add a lot of side dishes in her bowl. In the end, there were more side dishes than noodles in her bowl. Is there anyone who eats noodles like her? The most despicable thing was that after she finished eating, she just said that she would record the bill and leave. It's been almost a month, and I haven't seen her pay me back for the noodles. The noodle shop owner also had a lot of bitter water to spit out. They had seen many women, but it was rare to see someone as stingy as Bartlett. It was not an exaggeration to say that she was the best in the world. You guys are still okay, you just lost a little food. 2 months ago, we just went out to sea and caught a sea beast. We wanted to sell it for a small profit, but this woman used a price that was twice the market price to force me to sell the sea beast to her. Of course, I didn't agree at that time, but guess what? That woman just sat next to my stall and chased away all my customers. She even called people to threaten me. In order not to offend Spartan, I had no choice but to sell the sea beast to her at a low price and lost a lot of money. The more the man spoke, the more agitated he became, and his saliva sprayed at the man standing in front of him. Sigh, it's not easy for everyone. I hope that Spartan will dump Bartlett's sister as soon as possible. As long as she doesn't have a backer, we won't have to be afraid of her anymore. The innkeeper said. Stop talking, it's more important to watch the show. Look, those people can't move, what's going on? How come I've never heard of a swordmaster being able to do this? That's something that only mages can do. Someone on the side curiously stared at the 5 people who had turned into human statues and pointed at them. Could it be that this girl is a mage? Someone guessed that no one had heard of a mage being able to do this kind of thing. It can't be, but she's clearly a sword master. Someone said doubtfully. No matter how many people outside were discussing the profound question of whether Fengwu was a sword master or a magician, the Fengwu girl was staring straight at Bartlett. From time to time, she tilted her head and pondered. No one knew what she was thinking. Huh, you're so proud of yourself. You want to extort money from us? How dare you extort money from us with just these few pieces of material? You're really courting death. Margaret said proudly. How could she be so unlucky? Originally, she thought that these 2 women were alone, so she could just extort some money from them. But she didn't expect that not only did she not extort any money, she also caused her to lose people. She didn't know that she would be so unlucky. Actually, this is just a misunderstanding. My clothes are just a little dirty. I'll just take them home and wash them. I wasn't thinking clearly just now. Please don't lower yourself to my level. Bartlett was simply a typical example of someone who could bend and bend at the same time. After knowing that she couldn't beat them, she directly put down her pride. This was not something that anyone could do. Margaret looked at Bartlett, who was smiling with a flattering face, with some surprise. She really didn't expect that Bartlett, who was so arrogant just now, would instantly become a dog and retreat. This temperament change was really too fast. Guan Jian's change was so natural that it didn't make people feel uncomfortable. This was simply a fucking talent. Okay, you said it yourself. Don't go back and ask us for money. Margaret waved her hand. Since the other party had lowered her head, she was too lazy to pursue it further. Anyway, it wasn't a life and death feud. Of course, it's all my fault. I didn't look at the road when I walked. How could I ask you two for money? Bartlett immediately said seriously. Her expression was as sincere as it could be. If this was in the future, she would definitely be a movie queen. Xiao Wu, let's go. Let's continue to stroll in front. As long as Bartlett was particularly persistent, Margaret was too lazy to find trouble with her. While speaking, she took Fengwu's hand and the two of them walked out of the crowd one after another. Wait, you two, what about them? Bartlett didn't care much about these guards, but these guards were assigned to her by her sister. Moreover, they were important props for her to show off. If something happened to these 5 guys, who would support her when she showed off in the future? Margaret didn't understand these things, so she could only look at Fengwu. Fengwu turned to look at Bartlett and said, "They will be able to move in an hour." When Fengwu finished speaking, Margaret immediately pulled Fengwu away, leaving behind a large number of disappointed onlookers. What happened to hanging and beating? Why didn't you fight? I already took off my pants and you showed me this. Fuck, I was waiting to see you take care of Bartlett, this stinky woman who likes to take advantage of others. In the end, you just took care of a few small fries and left. Did you think about the audience's feelings when you did this? This woman was too lucky. She encountered an expert and was still fine. Sure enough, shameless people were invincible in the world. This woman had no bottom line. No matter what other people thought, Bartlett survived Fengwu's hands in one piece. Seeing Fengwu and others leave, Bartlett breathed a sigh of relief. Seeing a large group of people surrounding her and pointing at her, Bartlett was decisively angry. Fuck, I can't take care of those two, but I can't take care of you. What are you looking at? Be careful of your eyeballs. Bartlett glared at them. In order not to become Bartlett's punching bag, the crowd, which was originally 3 layers inside and 3 layers outside, disappeared completely in a breath. Only 5 human-shaped statues were left standing in the wind outside the clothing store. The fat maid looked at the 5 motionless guards helplessly. Miss, what should we do with these guys? Don't let her carry them back. Her small body can't bear it. You're really modest. Your body is not small, hee. You stay here and wait for them to recover. I'll go home first. After only thinking for a moment, Bartlett made a decision. Leaving the 5 human-shaped statues and a fat little maid standing in the wind, Bartlett left the clothing store with a clear conscience. The clothing store owner hid behind the door and silently chewed his handbook. Heavens! Hurry up and get rid of these 5 guys. With 5 fierce guys blocking the door, who will come to my store to buy clothes? The shop assistant in the store was also uncomfortable. He comforted his boss in a low voice. Anyway, they will leave in an hour. It's okay. Chapter 335. The small incident in front of the clothing store didn't affect Margaret's mood as the two shopped all the way. Because Fengwu was only interested in food, Margaret accompanied her for a stomach full of snacks. Later on, after eating too much, they randomly found a cold drink store to sit down and have a drink. There was a saying that one should never underestimate the wisdom of the ancients. Although the humans of the heavenly wind continent couldn't be considered ancient, their wisdom shouldn't be underestimated either. Cold drinks were very common in the modern era, and they had them here as well. Moreover, it was very convenient for them to make cold drinks. Any ice mage apprentice could create a pile of ice cubes for cold drinks. There weren't as many types of cold drinks as in the modern era. There were only some flower teas, fruit juices, sour plum juice, and ice milk, but business was still very good. Because these drinks weren't expensive, there were a lot of customers, most of whom were women. This store didn't only have drinks, but also some common snacks. When one was free, it was a great pleasure to chat and drink tea with 3 or 5 friends in this kind of small store. Fengwu and Margaret each ordered a cup of dark plum juice and grape juice, and sat down to chat. The sound of people chatting could be heard from time to time. "Are you guys going to the auction tomorrow?" A young woman's voice sounded. Hearing the 3 words auction, Margaret's ears perked up, wanting to hear more clearly. Fengwu was eating the snacks that had just been served, nodding her head in satisfaction. "Delicious. Of course, my father spent a lot of effort to get an entry ticket to the auction. I heard that this auction is the biggest auction in the past 50 years. There will be countless treasures being auctioned. Even if we don't buy anything, we must go and take a look." Another girl said excitedly. "Me too, I also told my brother that I'll go to the auction with him tomorrow. This time, no matter what, I must get a powerful magical beast cub. If you want a magical beast cub, you can just buy it in the store. Why must you wait for the auction? Really good things can only be bought at the auction. How can those ordinary stores sell high-quality goods?" The girl said disdainfully. Margaret was no longer interested in the topics that the female guests at the table were talking about. What she was most interested in now was the auction. This was the largest auction in the past 50 years, so he had to go and take a look no matter what. In the small inn where Ming Shi and the others were staying, the male members of Ming Shi's team, as well as Matson, were discussing whether or not they should go to the auction. Let's go. I've never been to an auction before." Mo Gue said excitedly. "I agree. It's not a bad idea to go and have a look. Maybe we can find something rare here," Jalal said. He was not short of money now that he had returned home once. "I agree. I heard that the auction this time is going to be very grand. Let's see which big shots are coming to Jade Fall Island." Their main goal was to see which clans wanted to enter the Sea God's tomb. It would be beneficial for them to learn more about their opponents. After all, they would be enemies once they entered the tomb. It was important to understand their opponents first. They weren't interested in the inheritances within the Sea God's tomb. After all, no matter how good the Sea God was, there were only inheritances related to water. At most, they wanted to go in and take a look, or maybe find some good weapons if they were lucky. Unfortunately, others didn't think so. The first thing they thought of when they saw you was to eliminate your opponent. Every time the tomb of the God of Sin opened, it meant a big battle. You could forget about finding your own opportunities after entering the tomb of the God of Sin. Let me ask you something. We're discussing whether or not we should go to the auction, but do we have admission tickets? Matson softly interrupted the excited group. They hadn't even seen where the admission tickets were, yet they were already discussing whether or not they should go to the auction. Was this appropriate? If they didn't have admission tickets, then what was the point of discussing it? Ajur, Mo Gue, and Riot turned their heads in confusion, then looked at Matson with hidden bitterness. There was no need to mention the resentment in her eyes. Matson's scalp was about to go numb. Ming Shi, what do you think? Matson wiped the sweat off his forehead, then turned to look at Ming Shi, who had been looking at the scenery outside the window. He pretended to ignore the gazes of the 3. As expected, the 3's attention was diverted. They all turned to look at Ming Shi, the person who had made the final decision. Senior Ming Shi, the 3 of them stretched out their last syllables at the same time. Ming Shi calmly tapped his fingers on the table. The sound of his fingers tapping on the table was very rhythmic. It was very clear in the room that had suddenly quieted down. I'll think of a way to get the admission tickets. Ming Shi's thin lips parted slightly. His magnetic and enchanting voice made Ajur and the other two look forward to it. "Oh yeah. That's great," the three of them shouted at the same time. Even Matson was so happy that the corners of his mouth curled up. It was the biggest auction in 50 years. Anyone who said they didn't want to go would definitely be lying. After Margaret and Fengwu returned, they immediately went to look for Ming Shi and the others. Before they could tell them about the auction, Ajur and the others had already excitedly told them about it. What? The auction tomorrow? Margaret had originally planned to pester Matson to think of a way to sneak into the auction, but before she could say anything, Ajur and the others had already told her this piece of good news. Margaret was so happy that she couldn't close her mouth. The auction would be held at 2 p.m. Because it was the largest auction in the past 50 years, the promotion work was done very well. They had been promoting the event for a whole month. Taking advantage of the opening of the tomb of the god of sin, the owner of the auction house was ready to go all out. Standing in front of the auction house, Margaret looked at the people entering the auction house one after another. She suddenly felt a little uneasy. "Brother, do you think Ming Shi can really get the admission tickets for the auction? He should be able to. Didn't he say that he'll think of a way to get the admission tickets?" Matson said after some thought. In fact, he also felt that it was quite strange. Since they'd discussed it yesterday, Ming Shi hadn't come into contact with anyone, nor had he seen him go out. He had been resting in the hotel all this time. Under such circumstances, how could he get the admission tickets? But now that Ming Shi was right next to him, he didn't dare to voice out his uneasiness. Is there really no problem with the admission tickets for Ming Shi's training field? The siblings weren't the only ones feeling uneasy. Even Riot and Mo Gui were feeling uneasy. Chapter 336. Right now, the only ones who had faith in Ming Shi were Ajur and Fengwu. They knew Ming Shi's true identity, and Ajur didn't believe that a prince of one of the four great empires wouldn't be able to enter a small auction. Fengwu didn't know what being a prince of the Silvermoon ancient kingdom meant, but she had absolute faith in Ming Shi. "Don't worry. Just follow me." Ming Shi maintained the smile on his face. That smile was very convincing. Perhaps it was because Ming Shi was too confident, but whether it was Marguerite, Mo Gui, or the others, they all felt a surge of confidence in their ability to enter the auction. Ming Shi walked in front, leading the 6 people behind him to the front of the auction hall. At the entrance, the attendant in charge of checking the admission tickets respectfully waited for Ming Shi to present his ticket. "Ask your manager to come out for a moment." Ming Shi smiled at the guard. The attendant was stunned. He hadn't expected such a handsome man to make such a request. "I don't know what business you have with our manager. Today is the big day of the auction, and the manager is busy with important matters. He can't meet with you." Although the attendant refused Ming Shi's request to see the manager, he didn't speak ill of him. In fact, his attitude was still very good. People couldn't help but sigh in admiration. As expected of a big auction house, even the gatekeeper had such a good service attitude. Ming Shi wasn't dissatisfied. Instead, he pulled out a silver card from his chest. It looked very ordinary, and there was nothing special about it. "Take this to your manager. He will see me," Ming Shi said. Seeing Ming Shi's confidence, the attendant knew that he was someone with a big background. So, he nodded and handed the job to another attendant. He took the card Ming Shi gave him and entered the auction hall to find the manager. At this moment, the steward was reporting to a slightly plump middle-aged man and a young man. "There's still half an hour before the auction starts. People are already entering the venue one after another. Apart from the 12 island masters, there will also be the nobles of the island, as well as the foreign aristocratic families and adventurers. I believe that this auction will be very successful." The person in charge was a man in his 40s who looked to be in his 40s. The man was rather thin, but his eyes were extremely shrewd. One look and one could tell that he was a capable person. N, very good. Remember to ask someone to keep an eye on them. I don't want any unnecessary conflicts to occur today. The slightly plump middle-aged man sitting on the main seat sipped his tea and said casually. Yes, I will definitely send someone to keep an eye on them, the manager hurriedly replied. At this time, there was a knock on the door. The three people in the room frowned slightly. The slightly plump man in charge waited for a moment and walked to the door to open it. Let the people outside come in and talk. Although the chubby man wasn't too happy that he was interrupted when he was explaining things, he thought that there might be something important to report, so he suppressed the displeasure in his heart. Yes. The steward replied. Then, he opened the door and let the service staff outside in. The service staff didn't expect that the boss was also in the steward's room. If he had known earlier, he wouldn't have come. The boss of their auction house was a person who valued rules very much. If it wasn't something important that disturbed the boss, he would have to bear the consequences. This service staff was, of course, the one who delivered the message for Ming Shi. He was very nervous now, afraid that he would be blamed by the boss later. He was also secretly praying that the ridiculously beautiful man was someone with some status. If the owner of this signboard didn't have enough status to make the boss forgive him for disturbing him, then he would be in trouble. What important matter do you have to report? The steward emphasized the important matter. The service staff's heart tightened. God, this signboard must be useful. No wonder when he said that he had something to report to the steward, that grandson Tang En smiled so lowly and was waiting for him here. Their auction house wasn't a peaceful place. Although the benefits here were good and the treatment was good, there was a lot of competition. He and Tang En had always been on bad terms. Today, this person was in front of the steward. Tomorrow, another person was in front of the steward. Everything he did was to get the steward's attention and have a good future in the future. He didn't expect that kid to be so sinister. He clearly knew that the boss was here, but he didn't say anything. He even watched him walk into the muzzle of the gun. Just you wait, grandson. When I escape this disaster, I will definitely teach you a lesson. The service staff didn't dare to be slow. Although he was crazily cursing that treacherous person called Tang En in his heart, his hands didn't slow down. He raised his hand and handed over the silver signboard. At the same time, he was crazily praying in his heart that it must be powerful. He originally only hoped that this signboard would be useful to make the boss and the steward let him go. He didn't expect that when this signboard appeared, both the boss and the steward's faces changed at the same time. It was as if they had drunk a few kilograms of strong alcohol. Of course, it wasn't because of anger, but because of excitement. Where is the person who gave you this signboard? The boss suddenly propped himself up from the table. His speed was so fast that it didn't match his body shape. At the door. The poor service staff was so scared that he was dumbfounded. He saw the man who was called the boss quickly come out from behind the table. Then, he went downstairs like lightning and disappeared. The young man next to the boss was dumbfounded. What kind of amazing person had come? Look at his father's speed. He was more than 10 years younger. The steward's reaction wasn't slow either. Before the service staff could react, he took a step forward and took the white signboard. Then, he pulled the service staff and ran out. Hurry up. I still need you to identify the person. The steward shouted, waking the service staff from his stupefied state. The two of them ran downstairs quickly, hoping to catch up with the boss. The young man wasn't slow either. He ran quickly behind the two of them. He also wanted to see who was so important to his father. Tang En was in a good mood because he had successfully taken advantage of his old rival. That brat wolf had always been fighting with him for power in front of the steward. Now that he finally had the chance to step on him, how could he let go of this opportunity? He saw the boss enter the steward's office with his own eyes. If Wolf bumped into him now, he would definitely be punished by the boss. In the future, he could only be a normal service staff in this auction house. He would never have the chance to be promoted again. With that thought, Tang Yen felt better and better. He even started humming a tune. Just then, a slightly plump figure rushed over. Tang Yen took a look. Isn't that the boss? Is that brat Wolf so awesome that he dares to make the boss so angry? Hello, boss. Tang Yen didn't dare to delay when he saw the boss, who was usually elusive. He immediately bowed and greeted him. However, the boss didn't even look at him. He waved his hand and pushed him away. Don't block the way. Chapter 337. Did he think he was a hindrance? Tang Yen thought to himself as he fell to the ground after being swatted away. The other staff members were all pointing at Tang Yen when they saw this scene. They were gloating over his misfortune. That's what you get for not learning well. Usually, you only know how to make things difficult for them. Look, now you're out of luck. Fuck. What kind of bad luck is this? Tang Yen was spamming the bullet screen in his mind. He was just waiting to see Worf's misfortune. He didn't expect that he would be the first to suffer before Worf's misfortune. Although he was cursing in his mind, he didn't dare to make a sound. What kind of place was this? If he dared to say anything bad about the boss, many people would want to take his place. He admitted that he was unlucky and got up. At the same time, he was trying to guess why his boss was in such a hurry. However, before he could figure it out, he saw the butler and Worf chasing after his boss in the direction that his boss had run off to. When Tang Yen passed by, the steward didn't even look at him. Instead, Worf glared at him fiercely, which confused Tang Yen. What happened? Why were the boss and the manager running around like crazy? Behind them, a young figure was also running. Wasn't that the boss's son, young Master Henry? What was going on? Why were the boss's son and the manager running around like they didn't care about their lives? Could it be that someone was causing trouble? All kinds of guesses instantly appeared in the staff's mind. However, the auction house had always had strict rules. No matter how curious they were about what made the boss, his son, and the manager so shocked, they didn't dare to ask or chase after them to see what was going on. The boss, who had run to the entrance of the auction house, was panting heavily. He looked at the sea of people in front of him and realized that he didn't seem to know what that person looked like. Fuck. Why didn't he think of bringing the guy who came in to report with him? Now, how was he going to recognize that person? At the same time, he was secretly blaming the waiter for not recognizing him. Why didn't he come out with him? Fortunately, the boss didn't have to worry for too long. The manager had already brought the person to him. Before the waiter could catch his breath, the boss immediately grabbed the waiter's collar and asked him to quickly bring him over to recognize the person. Young Master Henry, who was following behind, was in disbelief. Was this still his father, who was always wise no matter what happened? At the same time, he was even more curious about the big shot in his imagination. How could Wolf dare to say no? He immediately brought the boss and the manager to Ming Shi. Before Worf could introduce them, the owner went up to them. Greetings. The boss was so excited that the fat on his face was trembling. He wanted to kneel down and greet him as soon as he saw him. What was this place? This was the entrance of an auction house. Who was this boss? He was the owner of the only auction house on Jade Drop Island, the Guyu Auction House. What kind of place was the Guyu Auction House? It was one of the most famous auction houses in Heavenly Wind Continent, with branches all over the world. Legend has it that the owner of the Guyu Auction House is a member of the Silver Moon Ancient Kingdom's royal family, the younger brother of the current Moon Emperor, a Grand Prince. If it wasn't for such a strong background, with such a big business like the Guyu Auction House, there wouldn't be so few people who dared to have designs on it. The owner of such a strong background was actually so enthusiastic towards a young man, and even bowed to him. Although Ming Shi was one step ahead of the boss when he noticed that the boss was about to kneel down, he didn't let him kneel down. Although he didn't kneel down, the boss was so excited that he looked like he was having a heart attack, and that excessive respect was enough to explain the situation. Who was this young man? At that moment, all the aristocratic families participating in the auction had the same question in their minds. Those who had connections on the island had already sent people to find out, and those who didn't also wanted to secretly ask the boss about the young man's identity, to see if there was a chance to curry favor with him. To be able to make the Guyu Auction House's Jade Drop Island branch so courteously, this young man's identity was definitely not ordinary. Didn't you see how even the auction house's boss, who usually didn't give a damn about anything, was fawning over him? Regardless of what these people thought, the boss noticed that Ming Shi wanted to keep a low profile and immediately led Ming Shi and the rest into the auction house, not even bothering to ask for an entry ticket. Of course, the onlookers didn't care about whether or not the other party had an entry ticket. With the auction house's boss personally welcoming them, why would they need an entry ticket? You must be kidding me. Ming Shi expressed his desire to participate in the auction, and the boss immediately led Ming Shi to the reserved VIP box. For an auction house like this, there would definitely be 1 or 2 boxes reserved for guests of high status, but these kinds of guests were extremely rare. The auction house had been built on Jade Drop Island for more than 2 years, and in all these years, he had never used this reserved box for any guests. Ming Shi was the first person to enter in 200 years. Young master, are you satisfied with this box? The fat boss smiled so widely that his eyes couldn't be seen. Henry, who was following behind him, felt like his eyes were burning. His father's smile was usually fake, but when he smiled so flatteringly, it was too frightening. The fat boss cleverly called Ming Shi young master instead of your highness. Just now, Ming Shi had expressed his desire to keep a low profile at the entrance, and most of the people behind him had curious expressions. Clearly, they didn't know Ming Shi's identity, but the boss couldn't call him out. What if this prince wanted to show off until the end? Oh. No, he wanted to keep a low profile until the end. I'm very satisfied. This place is not bad. Ming Shi nodded, a faint smile on his face. He didn't seem to be uncomfortable with the boss's excessive enthusiasm. On the other hand, the Matson siblings, Riot, and Mo Gui all felt uncomfortable. Who exactly was Ming Shi? Why would the auction house's boss personally come out to welcome them? Didn't he say that they couldn't enter without an entry ticket? However, Ming Shi only showed a small token, and these people's attitudes changed drastically. Not only did the boss personally welcome them, but he also gave them such a luxurious box. It had to be known that those who could sit in a box at an auction had to have sufficient status in addition to money. Otherwise, no matter how much money you had, you wouldn't be able to enter the box. However, Ming Shi let them in so easily, and even treated them like emperors. The treatment was so good that they felt like they were dreaming. Just yesterday, they were still thinking about whether or not to steal someone's entry ticket or buy a ticket from a scalper. Although the scalpers were only selling tickets for the first floor, it was still better than nothing. They were still annoyed yesterday, but now they were in a VIP box. It felt like a modern-day loser who was saving money to buy a 60-square-meter suite, but the next day, not only did he win 5 million, but he also lived in a villa that was worth over $1 million. Chapter 338. The slightly plump boss was grinning from ear to ear. If there's nothing else, boss, you can go back to work. Today is the big day of the auction. I believe your auction house has many things to do. The boss saw that Ming Shi did not want them to stay here and be a hindrance, so he immediately left with his people. But before he left, he told Ming Shi to buy whatever he liked and put all the money on his tab. This shocked Henry. He knew his father very well. Although his father, Claude was not a miser, he was definitely not generous. Even his monthly allowance was strictly controlled. Now, his father wanted to spend a lot of money for a beautiful man that he had never seen before. One had to know that the items being auctioned today were not cheap. In order to make use of the sea god's tomb shares to earn fame and money, his father had started preparing for this 2 months ago. Even the publicity had been going on for an entire month. One could imagine how high the transaction today would be. Originally, there was a chance to earn a lot, but his father wanted to vomit blood. Henry really wanted to shout at his father, "Are you kidding me?" After Claude left Ming Shi's box with his people, Henry could not wait to know the identity of the person inside. Claude brought his son Henry back to his office, while the manager went to greet the guests. After the father and son entered the office, Henry immediately asked the question he wanted to know the most. "Dad, who was that person just now? You were so respectful to him, could he be a young master from some super rich family?" "But that's not right, with our Guyu auction house's background, even if a super rich family came, you wouldn't be so afraid. Could it be, he's a royal family of the Silver Moon Ancient Kingdom?" Henry excitedly started to speculate. He had guessed the identity of that person many times, and the most likely was that he was an upper-class person of the Silver Moon Ancient Kingdom, and his status was not low, maybe even a royal family member. Claude looked at his son with gratification, happy for his son's obvious growth in intelligence. "At least you're not stupid. That young master just now was a real prince. He's the son of the Moon Emperor. Then what's his rank? Is he powerful? Is his status high in the Silver Moon Ancient Kingdom? Are you favored or not?" Harry was very curious about Ming Shi's background. He was a prince, and he had only returned to the Silver Moon Ancient Kingdom a few times since he was young. On Jade Drop Island, he was the son of the Guyu auction house branch owner, but in the Silver Moon Ancient Kingdom, he was just a nobody. After Henry had been there twice, he couldn't hang out with the ladies there, so he didn't want to go there again. All these years, he had been staying on Falling Jade Island, occasionally helping his father Claude with his business and rarely returning to the Silver Moon Ancient Country. However, Harry never would have thought that the prince he had never seen before would actually appear on Falling Jade Island. This news was simply too shocking. "How am I supposed to answer all your questions? All I know is that he should be the young prince of Silver Moon Ancient Kingdom, Ming Shi. His father is the current Moon Emperor, and if I'm not mistaken, he's most likely to ascend to the throne. That can't be right. Didn't you say he's the youngest prince? Doesn't he have an older brother? Don't tell me that Ming Shi's older brother has no interest in the Silver Moon Ancient Kingdom's throne. Why would he let his younger brother take the throne?" Harry didn't believe that the Silver Moon Ancient Kingdom's princes would be so friendly that they wouldn't have any interest in their younger brother becoming the next Moon Emperor. The nobles on Falling Jade Island were willing to kill their parents and siblings for a title, not to mention the throne of the Silver Moon Ancient Kingdom. Even if his father told him that the princes were fighting each other, he would believe it. "You brat, I told you to study our Silver Moon Ancient Kingdom's history, but you didn't. Look at you, you don't even know this. Our Silver Moon Ancient Kingdom doesn't choose the successor based on birth, they look at bloodline and power. Whoever inherits the most bloodline power will be the next Moon Emperor. This is how our Silver Moon Ancient Kingdom chooses its ruler for many years. Don't ask such a stupid question in the future, I'm too lazy to answer you." Claude rolled his eyes at his son. This brat didn't want to study properly and only thought about doing business all day long. Harry smiled foolishly and scratched his head. He didn't dare to continue. He originally wanted to ask about the silver token, but he decided not to. Didn't he see that his dad was already dissatisfied with him? He was afraid that this would be another common-sense question. If it exposed his ignorance, his dad would definitely scold him badly. Forget it, he'll wait until the auction is over and ask the manager what the token is. Ming Shi and the others didn't know what Harry was thinking and talking about. After Claude and his son left, everyone in the box felt a lot more comfortable. I say, big brother Ming Shi, I really couldn't tell that you were such a big shot. Even the boss of the Guyu auction house gave you face. Margaret never dreamed that there was such a rich person by her side. Senior Ming Shi, do you still need a leg accessory? Mo Gui jumped up and hugged Ming Shi's leg smoothly. Stop messing around. Ming Shi's mouth twitched and he rubbed his forehead. Senior Ming Shi, what is that token? Is it your family's token? Riot was also very curious. There were many legends about Ming Shi in the school. Some said that he was just a commoner, some said that he was a noble, and some said that he was actually a prince. Because there were so many legends, no one knew which was true and which was false. However, the girls who liked Ming Shi all thought that Ming Shi was definitely a prince. Whoever dared to say otherwise was going against them. And the boys who looked down on Ming Shi and thought that he was prettier than a girl, said that Ming Shi was a lowly commoner, or the illegitimate child of a commoner and a noble. In short, they said whatever they wanted to say. Riot had always heard of these rumors in the school, but they had nothing to do with him, so he didn't care and didn't participate in the discussions. Today, after seeing Ming Shi's power, Riot was curious about Ming Shi's true identity. This is a gift from an elder in my family, all the brothers in my family have one. With this identity token, no matter which branch of the Guyu auction house you go to, you will receive the highest VIP treatment and even enjoy a 30% discount. Chapter 339. The one who gave Ming Shi the token was none other than the prince who founded the Guyu auction house. Although the prince was a prince, he was fond of doing business since he was young. Other than the Guyu auction house, there were many other businesses under his name. The prince had always been generous to his own people. As long as they were a member of the Silver Moon Ancient Kingdom's royal family, he would give them the token. Currently, only the Silver Moon Ancient Kingdom's royal family had this token, as well as a few elders of the Elder Council. Who told Silver Moon to have such a small population? Even though there were some members from the previous generation, they were either in isolated cultivation or traveling outside all year round. Even if the prince wanted to give them a badge, he didn't have the chance. Your family's elder must be very amazing to be able to get a 30% discount at the auction. That would save a lot of money. Margaret said enviously. Don't say any more, let's sit down and eat. There are so many delicious dishes on the table, and there's also the auction catalog. Everyone can take a look at what you like. Anyway, Ming Shi Sr. has a 30% discount. Ajur beckoned everyone to sit down. Everyone tactfully didn't ask any more questions. After all, everyone had their own secrets. Ajur's actions clearly meant that he didn't want them to ask any more questions. Of course, they tactfully didn't ask any more questions. However, from Ajur's actions, everyone could see one thing, and that was that Ajur knew about Ming Shi's identity. Because he knew, Ming Shi didn't want them to ask any more questions. Ming Shi saw Ajur's actions and didn't stop him. To be honest, he didn't want his identity to be known by the world. Even if Ajur didn't stop them from asking, he would have changed the topic. However, it was better to have Ajur's help. It seemed that he would have to treat this kid better in the future. Should he bring him along when he's doing missions in the Mirage? Ajur didn't know that Ming Shi was already thinking about how to give him benefits. If he knew, his mood would definitely be better. Fengwu munched on the pastries as she flipped through the catalog sent by the auction house. There were many rare magic beast cores, precious herbs, potions, magic weapons, and various ores. There were also very rare saint-level magic books and magic beast eggs up for auction. These things were all very precious, but it was a pity that Fengwu was only interested in eating. She didn't care about these treasures, which were worth a fortune in the eyes of others. The food provided by the Guyu auction house was very exquisite. Not only was it exquisite, it was also very delicious. Moreover, there was an unlimited supply. She could eat as much as she wanted. Of course, this was only limited to the VIP room. Fengwu was obviously more interested in this food than the auction items. After eating, she asked the maids outside the door to send more food. She didn't feel embarrassed at all. Ming Shi allowed her to do as she pleased. As long as she wanted to eat, he would have the maids outside deliver it to her. In the end, Ajur couldn't stand it anymore and told them to use a bigger plate instead of using such a small plate. When these words came out, the maids waiting outside the door almost choked with anger. What stingy, it's obviously you guys who ate too much. Look at the guests in the other rooms, which one of them would put all their attention on eating? Only you guys in this room are full of weirdos who only care about eating. Although they thought this in their hearts, the maids didn't dare to show any dissatisfaction. Even their smiles didn't stiffen at all. They were still smiling gracefully, making it hard for people to imagine that these maids were crazily spamming the bullet screen in their hearts. These maids were all carefully nurtured by the Guyu auction house at a high price. Not only were they gentle and considerate, if a guest liked them, they could even buy them back. These girls were originally orphans with no parents. Moreover, they were all outstanding beauties. If it wasn't for Claude who saved them, most of these girls would have been thrown into the fire pit at a young age. These girls didn't have any resentment towards Claude. After all, they were going to be thrown into the fire pit. Compared to being trampled on by ordinary men, wasn't it better to be able to serve a noble? It was common sense for people to strive for higher places while water flows down. As for Ming Shi's group, these girls had other thoughts, especially towards Ming Shi. The 4 girls waiting outside the door all hoped that Ming Shi would take a fancy to them. Unfortunately, he didn't understand their feelings and didn't show any interest in them. The 4 of them had all received strict training and were different from those girls who would throw themselves at men. If a man showed no interest in them, they wouldn't pester him. Their attitude wouldn't make him feel disgusted. Soon, a large plate of desserts was served. They would try their best to satisfy the guest's request, even if this request was a bit strange. Eat. Ming Shi smiled like a spring breeze and pushed the plate of desserts in front of Fengwu. The stoic girl tilted her head and narrowed her eyes. The corners of her mouth curled into a smile. Fengwu grabbed a piece of dessert and quickly ate it. She couldn't be more happy. Dessert delivery girl, so this young master likes stoic lolas? The dessert delivery was only a small part of the show. Soon, the main event came. The auction had officially begun. This time, 300 admission tickets and 10 VIP tickets were issued. Those with VIP tickets could enter the private rooms to participate in the auction, while the VIP tickets could only be obtained by the few families or individuals with the highest status. Welcome everyone to our Guyu auction house. I am the MC of this auction, Lu Shui. A black-haired girl with a hot body appeared on the stage. Immediately, all the lights fell on her body, making her look extremely dazzling. Wow! It's actually Miss Lu Shui. Cries of surprise rang out. Who is this beauty? A noob who didn't know Lu Shui asked the person next to him in a low voice. You don't even know Lu Shui. She's the island master's youngest daughter, Jade Drop Island's eldest daughter. The person next to him rolled his eyes. How did the island master's daughter become the MC? Hearing Lu Shui's identity, that person felt even more strange. TCH, you don't even know this. Are you a foreigner? Lu Shui and Xiao Shui are the fiancés of the Guyu auction house's young master Henry. This time, the Guyu auction house's biggest auction in 50 years. As the future mistress of the Guyu auction house, of course Miss Lu Shui would come to help her fiancé. So it's like that. That noob finally understood. I didn't think that even Lu Shui would come to help. That old fellow Claude really used everything he could. In one of the private rooms, a middle-aged man sneered while drinking red wine. Looks like Claude really put in a lot of effort. From another private room, there was also a faint sneer. Ming Shi and the rest didn't say anything, only watching Lu Shui's speech with interest. Today, our Guyu auction house will be auctioning 300 items, and there will be one last item to be auctioned. Now, we will begin the auction of the first item, please take a look. A beautiful woman walked up with a long box in her arms and placed it on the table in the middle of the room. Chapter 340. Lu Shui opened it with a smile. The first item is a magic sword created by the famous master blacksmith XXX. The master named it Windchaser. This sword is made from 15 types of high-grade ores, and the hilt is embedded with a 9th-rank wind element magic beast core. When swung, this sword is extremely fast. Only a top-tier swordsman can withstand its attack. The starting bid for this item is 500 gold coins. Each bid won't be lower than 50 gold coins. There's no upper limit. The auction for the Windchaser sword begins now. 1,000 gold coins. I bid 1,100. 1,200. 1,500. The bidding continued. Ming Shi and the others were seated in the box, so they could clearly see what was happening outside. However, the people outside couldn't see them. This sword isn't bad. It's only the first item, and the price is already over 1,000. How much more will the rest be? I originally wanted to just casually bid, but I didn't expect the items here to be so expensive. Margaret smacked her lips. Hearing the rising numbers, she felt like a poor person. Normally, a magic sword like this could fetch a maximum of 5,000 gold coins if sold outside. However, that might not necessarily be the case here. This is where the charm of an auction lies, Ming Shi said with a faint smile as she took a sip of the fruit tea that had just been served. That's true. I feel like even I want to bid. If I don't bid once at an auction, I feel like I'm missing something. Mo Gue nodded in agreement. Feng Wu, the snacks are so delicious. 6,000 gold coins going once, going twice, going thrice. Sold. After Lu Shui knocked 3 times, the auction was finally over. The Windchaser sword is finally won by customer number 117 for 6,500 gold coins. Let us congratulate customer number 117 for winning the item he wanted. A round of enthusiastic applause rang out. Customer number 117 was a middle-aged man as thin as a bamboo pole. Seeing so many people clapping for him, he was so excited that his face turned red. He had probably never been the center of attention in his life. Next up was the second auction item. This item was a magic staff. Moreover, its level wasn't low. It could be considered a relatively good magic equipment. In the end, this magic staff was sold for a price that wasn't far off from the wind-chasing sword. At this time, in a certain box, a beautiful girl wearing a blue robe with blue hair down to her waist was looking at the catalog sent by the auction house. Irene, do you have something you want? Tell me what you want. If you don't have enough money, I'll help you. The girl in white said playfully. This woman in white was not an ordinary person. She was the little princess of Cloud Water Country. Her name was Elisa, and she was a very innocent and cute little princess. After Irene and her team members completed their mission, they happened to hear about the opening of the Sea God's tomb. Irene thought that the opening of the Sea God's tomb this time was a great opportunity for women. In this trip to the tomb of the Sea God, Zicheng had obtained the Heart of Water, which all water spellcasters yearned for even in their dreams. The Heart of Water was the crystallization of water elemental magic. There would only be one Heart of Water in the entire continent. Moreover, it was extremely difficult to nurture a Heart of Water. Without tens of thousands of years of accumulation, it would be impossible to successfully condense a Heart of Water. Water spellcasters who obtained the Heart of Water would advance rapidly as if they had a cheat. Moreover, there would be no side effects. Zicheng was originally a 5-element spellcaster. Cultivating all 5 elements, the Heart of Water would be of great help to her. It was because she obtained the heart of water in this place that the woman knew the benefits of the heart of water. She began to search for the heart of metal, heart of wood, heart of fire, and heart of earth. At the end of the novel, Zicheng really succeeded in collecting all of them. Moreover, he took the heart of 5 elements and ascended to the heavenly realm. She could not let the heart of water fall into the hands of the female lead and become her super cheat. Originally, the favorability system was already a cheat. She did not want the female lead's cheat to continue increasing. At this time, the reason why Irene appeared at this auction was because she knew that the female lead would obtain another opportunity here, and that was the egg of the ancient wise beast. Every ancient wise beast was intelligent and had strong auxiliary abilities. At this place, Zicheng would buy an ancient wise beast egg that had been auctioned 36 times. Of course, these people in the auction house did not know that it was the egg of the ancient wise beast. If they had known, only a fool would have taken it out to auction. This ancient wise beast was very strange. Its auxiliary ability was the ability to foresee. Yes, the ancient wise beast's attack power was not strong. They would generally choose to attach themselves to a powerful mythological beast or to a human powerhouse. They would use their own ability to seek the protection of the powerhouse. Zicheng obtained the ancient wise beast egg at this place. Then, the ancient wise beast became her contract beast. From then on, she could see a part of the future and escaped several calamities. Foreseeing the future, even she was moved by such a powerful ability. Her goal this time was to rob Zicheng's Hu so that she wouldn't be able to bid for the ancient Rui beast egg. Princess Eliza was next to her. Irene met her when she came to Jade Drop Island. This little princess was very kind-hearted. When she saw that Irene wanted to take a boat to Jade Drop Island alone, she let her on the boat. The two of them chatted and became good friends. Irene's team did not come together. This kind of exploration of the divine tomb was very dangerous. Their team leader did not dare to bring a few vegetables to explore such a dangerous divine tomb. After she handed in the mission together, she immediately rushed to Jade Drop Island with her fastest speed. She did not care about the danger. In any case, she could not let Zicheng obtain any benefits. Thinking of this world on the sea, Irene felt a headache. This place was simply made to give the female-led equipment. The demon-suppressing sword, the heart of water, and the ancient wise beast were all obtained in this world on the sea. Zicheng had cheated the people who lived on the sea. Those who were cheated clearly suffered so miserably, but they did not know who the real culprit was. Afterwards, they were deeply grateful to Zicheng and even made a statue for her. Just thinking about it made her drunk. Right, Zicheng would meet the male lead here. That male lead was not an ordinary person, but the young master of a super family. Moreover, he was engaged to this Princess Eliza. According to the development of the plot, Zicheng should have already met that genius young master in the mirage. Moreover, the two of them admired each other. In the sea god's tomb, the two of them would meet for the first time in real life. From then on, the male lead would be dead set on her. The two of them would start to hook up, and Eliza would be the cannon fodder of their love. In the book, it was written that the female lead Zicheng did not know that the man she liked was engaged. It was not until Eliza heard about this that she found Zicheng and asked Zicheng to leave her fiancé. Only then did Zicheng know that she had unintentionally become a mistress. She was angry, hateful, and resentful. She promised to leave the male lead and never see him again. Later, when the male lead found out about this, he thought that Eliza had destroyed his relationship with Zicheng. He did not want to pay attention to Eliza anymore and even said that he wanted to break off the engagement. Chapter 341. At that time, the male lead was completely captivated by the female lead. He was willing to give up the whole world for her. Elisa didn't appear much in the original novel. It could only be seen that she was a very infatuated girl. She was willing to suffer all kinds of grievances for the person she loved. Elisa's mother couldn't bear to see her precious daughter endure such humiliation. She sent experts to kill Zicheng. Of course, they were also there to give experience to the female lead. In the end, the male lead's family and the Water Cloud Nation fought fiercely. Both sides suffered heavy losses, but the male lead and the female lead were completely fine. The plot after that was simply godly. It was fine if she didn't mention it. Her most important thing now was to snatch the ancient Rui beast egg from the female lead. When the female lead bought it, the egg had been sold many times, so the price wasn't expensive. The female lead bought the egg at a very cheap price. With her here today, Zicheng took advantage of the situation. Irene? What are you thinking? I'm asking you a question. Elisa saw that her new friend seemed to be in a daze, so she pouted cutely. I still have a lot of gold coins on me. If it's not enough, I'll definitely look for you. Irene came back to her senses and smiled. That's good. If you don't have enough money, you must tell me. Elisa nodded and said with satisfaction. Irene sighed again in her heart. What a good girl. So pure, so cute, and so loyal. She really didn't understand how the male lead could be conquered by the female lead's beggar's chicken. That's right. When the male and female lead first met, the female lead treated the male lead to eat beggar's chicken. From then on, the male lead looked at the female lead in a new light. Was it because the chicken was too charming or because the female lead's cooking skills were too good? In another private room, a thin and weak man sat there. The man's appearance was somewhat ordinary. In the eyes of this era, he wasn't that handsome. However, the man's temperament was very good. He was clean and fresh. Coupled with his pure eyes, his temperament alone could instantly kill many men. Young master, eat some fruit. A round and cute little maid showed 8 snow-white teeth. She held a freshly cut fruit in her small hands and fed it to the young man. The young man gently used his hand to block the girl's feeding hand. Yuan, eat by yourself. The young man chuckled, his eyes gentle. Yes, young master. The little maid named Yuan didn't stand on ceremony at all. After answering happily, she put the fruit in her hand into her mouth. She ate happily and contentedly. The corner of the butler's mouth twitched as he thought to himself, young master pampered Yuan too much. Young master, there's still a while before the auction starts. Do you need to look at something else? The butler stood behind the young man and asked respectfully. This youth was called Shozo, and he was a direct descendant of the Blakeston family. The young man had a secret, he was a reincarnator from the future. One morning a month ago, Xiaozuo was reborn with his memory of the future. He remembered everything that would happen in the future. Chazal had an elder brother named Caesar, who was the pride of the Blakeston family. Not only was Caesar handsome, but he was also extremely talented. The elders of the family asserted that Caesar was the one with the most hope of reaching the magic god realm in the family. In Xiaozuo's eyes, Caesar was a lucky child born with a halo. Not only was he talented, but he was also engaged to the girl he had always been secretly in love with, Elisa. Because Xiaozuo's body had been weak since he was young, he couldn't cultivate no matter if it was magic or fighting aura. Fortunately, he was open-minded. With the protection of his father and brother, no one dared to look down on him. He wasn't the kind of person who would go down a dead end. In Xiaozuo's mind, as long as his family and the girl he liked could be happy, that would be the happiest thing for him. However, he didn't expect that his elder brother would personally kill the girl he loved so much, Elisa. His elder brother said that Elisa sent people to kill the woman he loved. How could that be? Elisa was a kind and pure girl. Even if his elder brother didn't love her, she would never send people to kill someone. Elisa's death made him heartbroken. His elder brother left the family for that woman. Since then, the Water Moon country and the Blackston family became mortal enemies. The two families fought for more than half a year and both sides suffered losses. The family sent countless people to find his elder brother Caesar and give the Water Moon country an explanation. Unexpectedly, Caesar not only didn't come back, but also killed many of his uncles and brothers in order to protect that woman called Zicheng. He wanted to find his elder brother and ask him clearly, but there was nothing he could do. He could only watch his elder brother and the family turn against each other. Later, Caesar and that woman became famous. The two of them became like saviors. For a time, the limelight was unparalleled. Some people in the family wanted to find Caesar and let him lead the family to glory, but his father didn't agree. He still remembered his father saying that a person who could kill his own family for a woman was not qualified to be a member of the Blackston family. No matter how high he went in the future, he would have nothing to do with the Blackston family. He knew how heartbroken his father was at that time. Caesar had always been the pride of the family. He was his father's pride, but his elder brother did such a thing for a woman. He betrayed the family and killed Elisa. No matter what, it was unforgivable. Later, Caesar and that woman became magic gods and went to the divine realm. Less than 30 years after they left, the magic particles in the air became chaotic. People could no longer absorb any magic elements. If they tried to forcefully absorb them, they would explode and die. If this was a fatal blow to the human race, what happened next was simply sending people to hell. The water resources of the continent began to dry up. The green plants gradually withered and the land began to turn into desertification. Whether it was humans or magical beasts, their living conditions became worse and worse. The five elements' magic energy began to slowly disappear until it could no longer be felt. This process took less than 100 years. After that, spatial cracks began to appear in the space where people lived. As more and more spatial cracks appeared, the places where people could live became less and less. Although there was the protection of the Star Hall and the four great empires, it still couldn't change the living conditions of the human race. People investigated the reason for such changes in the Heavenly Wind continent. It was only later that they found out that the heart of the five elements on the continent had been taken away. Without the heart of the five elements, the magic particles of the five elements of metal, wood, water, fire and earth would gradually disappear. The five elements would lose their balance and the land would turn into desertification. The appearance of the spatial cracks meant that this world had lost the heart of the five elements. The five elements were severed and the laws were incomplete. What awaited this world was destruction. Chapter 342. Where did the heart of the five elements go? Who took it away? They finally got the answer to this question from someone. It was a woman who had been on very good terms with Zicheng before he ascended. It was said that Zicheng had barged into her family alone for that woman and killed all those who had mistreated and bullied her. They all thought that this woman was on very good terms with Zicheng. They did not expect that she would stand up and accuse Zicheng at that time. That woman was called Nelly. At that time, Nelly was already a warlock saint. When she talked about Zicheng, her eyes were filled with hatred. He still remembered what Nelly said when he was by his father's side, "I don't know what's going on. Ever since I met her, I liked to stay by her side more and more, I just wanted to be friends with her, but later on, I didn't even recognize myself. I couldn't refute anything she said. Once I refuted, I felt that I had committed an unforgivable sin, I only saw her in my eyes. It was as if she was my only family in this world, my only faith. Everyone else was no longer important. As long as it was for her, I was willing to do anything. When she killed my father and my family, I didn't even feel sad at all. I was only touched by her, all of this was too scary. Why did I become like that? That wasn't me. I loved my family, I loved my family. How could I betray my family and steal my family's sacred weapon for a friend? In the end, I even joined forces with outsiders to kill my family who had always loved me so much." Nellie's cries were simply heart-wrenching. The priests of the four empires checked her body, but they did not find any traces of her being tampered with. However, from Nellie's words, it was obvious that she had been controlled by something. In the end, she had become Zicheng's puppet. There was more than one person who said the same thing as Nellie. The men who had been infatuated with Zicheng had all woken up. Most of them were still alive and well. Thinking of their crazy infatuation with Zicheng, even when Zicheng left, they did not regret it. This was simply like a dream. Furthermore, the bunch of brainless things they had done for Zicheng made them wish they were dead. Later on, everyone confirmed that Zicheng indeed had the ability to turn those who liked her into puppets who would only listen to her. If it wasn't for the chaotic laws of the world and the impending destruction of the world, no one would have discovered her method of control, and the people she controlled would not have regained their consciousness. From the mouths of these people, the truth had finally surfaced. It was Zicheng who had taken away the heart of 5 elements. It was she who had led this world to destruction. In an instant, the goddess who was praised by tens of thousands of people became the most vicious woman in the world. Her statue was personally destroyed by the angry people, and all the books that praised her were burned. Fortunately, there was always a way out. The masters of the 4 great empires, the 4 emperors of heaven, earth, sun, and moon, decided to use all their power to activate the secret treasure of the kingdom of the sky, the Wheel of Time. The Wheel of Time was an artifact that could only be activated by the descendants of God's blood. However, if the caster used the Wheel of Time to go back to the past, all his power would be sucked away and he would die. Moreover, the person who was sent back had to be an ordinary person because there was no longer any 5 elements magic in this world to replenish magic power. The more powerful the soul, the lower the success rate. Only the soul of an ordinary person could guarantee a 70% success rate. At this time, Shozo took the initiative to stand up and expressed his willingness to use the Wheel of Time to go back to the past and change history, even if the consequence of failure was the death of his soul. Going back to the past was not without danger. When passing through the time tunnel, one's soul would be torn apart by the power if he was not careful. Shozo had been an ordinary person for so many years. He lived under the protection of his family. Even the fact that he could live for so long was because his father had found a treasure that could prolong his life. He had enjoyed the care of his family since he was young, and now it was time for him to repay his family. At that time, there was indeed no one more suitable than Shozo. After all, he was Caesar's younger brother. Before Caesar left the family, their relationship had always been good. Before he came back, his father said that if Caesar was still obsessed with that woman, he should kill Caesar. He could not let him harm the family. As for the location where Zicheng obtained the heart of 5 elements, Shozo had already memorized all the locations through her former friends and suitors. Because there was no magic element, the 4 emperors used their bloodline power to activate the Wheel of Time. When the activation was successful, the 4 emperors were sucked dry and died, while he was sent into the time tunnel. In the process of passing through the time tunnel, his physical body was destroyed by the power of time. He despaired and thought that he had failed. In the end, he failed to live up to everyone's expectations. He did not expect that when he opened his eyes again, he had already returned. He had returned to the month before the tomb of the sea god opened. Everything was still not too late. He carried the future of people on his back. He had to stop all of this from happening. Zicheng did not know that her enemies had increased. There was already Irene who was eyeing her covetously, wanting to snatch her opportunity at any time. Now, there was a reincarnated person who came back from the age of chaos in the heavenly wind continent. He wondered what she would think when she found out about this. In the novel that Irene had read, it only mentioned that Zicheng had become a god. What happened after that was not written at all. Of course, she would not know that the heart of 5 elements was actually related to the survival of the entire continent. The heart of 5 elements was condensed from the 5 magic elements of this continent. Although it took a long time to condense the heart of 5 elements, it was not irreproducible. In order to condense another heart of 5 elements, there was a condition. That was that the previous heart of 5 elements had already perished. Although Zicheng had brought the heart of 5 elements away from this continent, the heart of 5 elements had not perished. As long as the previous heart of 5 elements was still there, the laws of the world would not be able to condense a new one. Therefore, Zicheng had brought the heart of 5 elements away, directly causing the heavenly wind continent to enter the age of chaos, gradually heading towards destruction. Irene did not know about any of this. She was currently busy snatching Zicheng's opportunity. Where was Zicheng? She had really come. Furthermore, she did not come alone. She came with Caesar. After Zicheng escaped from the evil hands of the demon general, she immediately went to look for her original team. Needless to say, she really found them. The others had already completed their mission. As Zicheng was usually a successful person, and Zicheng was swept away by the waves, they could not be blamed for being absent. Chapter 343. The rest of the team understood her and didn't blame her for not participating in the mission. Instead, they comforted her. Later, news of the opening of the tomb of the god of sin came. Zicheng and her friends naturally came to Falling Jade Island. However, the senior who led the team didn't want to join in the fun. Fortunately, the senior had a good impression of Zicheng. Zicheng tactfully expressed her desire to take a look, and the senior agreed to bring them to the tomb of the sea god. Zicheng didn't expect her to be so lucky to meet Caesar as soon as she got off the ship. She was very happy to see her friend. From the favorability rating, she could see that Caesar's favorability towards her had reached 80. As long as she worked hard, 100 favorability wouldn't be far away. Eve and Rika sat next to Zicheng. Zicheng naturally brought the two of them with her this time. Rika's favorability rating had been stuck at 90. This made her feel strange. Wasn't it too difficult to raise her favorability with Rika? In order to raise her favorability with Rika to 100, Zicheng took the initiative to bring Rika along. However, she didn't expect that before she could raise her favorability rating, she would fall into the water first. She was unlucky enough to fall into a pirate's lair. Caesar looked at the woman sitting next to him. Zicheng was kind and gentle, and also very strong. She didn't want to rely on a man, and only wanted to rely on her own efforts to win the respect of others. He admired this kind of hard-working woman. Zicheng, if there's something you like, buy it. Consider it a gift from me. Caesar's feelings for Zicheng hadn't reached the level of love yet, but his feelings for Zicheng weren't fake. He didn't think there was anything wrong with giving a gift to a girl he liked. On the other hand, Eve and Rika looked at the two with ambiguous gazes. Caesar was rich, powerful, and handsome. He was simply irresistible. They had long heard of Caesar's name. Caesar was a famous magic genius. Moreover, he was the young master of the Blakeston family. If there were no accidents, the future patriarch of the family would be Caesar. If Zicheng could marry Caesar, she would be a phoenix. They were naturally happy to see such a good thing happen. Eve and Rika were the daughters of small nobles, so they knew the difference between a normal noble family and a super family. There's no need. I won't accept a reward for nothing. Forgive me for not being able to accept your kindness. Zicheng bit his lips and said softly. This is the first time we've met in real life. You helped me the first time we met. Consider this my gift to you, Caesar said, not allowing her to refuse. But that was just a small matter. I didn't want any gifts. Zicheng's purple eyes looked at Caesar seriously. She was telling him that she really meant it. Although Caesar was a little disappointed, he didn't want to force her to accept his gift. He could only let it go. At the same time, his impression of Zicheng rose again. At this time, Zicheng checked the favorability system. It turned out that Caesar's favorability towards her had risen by 5 points. Now it was 85. Zicheng was happy in her heart, but she didn't show any emotion on her face. At this time, there was a soft cry from outside the box. Why is it this thing again? How many times has it been unsold? Why are you still taking it out? The person who spoke was obviously not a first-time visitor to the Guyu auction house. He was a regular. That's right. This thing has been unsold so many times. Why are you still taking it out? No one will sell it, okay? The people below the stage who had seen it before all shouted. There were even people who said that they should just bid for the next item. Lu Shui didn't say anything and started to bid on the item in her hand. The item in my hand is the 70th item of this auction. This is an unknown ore. This ore is very hard and no one has ever seen this type of ore before. Our auction house's refiners have spent a lot of effort but still couldn't melt this ore. From this, you can see how hard it is. Dong Shui talked a lot about the ore, but there weren't many people who were interested. Even if there were people who were interested, after hearing that this thing had been unsold dozens of times, they lost interest. This item is an unknown ore. The starting price is 100 gold. The bidding starts now. Unfortunately, there weren't many people who were interested in this item. However, there were 2 people who were attending the auction for the first time who wanted to see what it was. They casually called out a price of 150 gold and 200 gold, 300 gold. Someone called out, 300 gold. Anyone else? 300 gold going once. Lu Shui called out with a smile on her face, 300 gold going twice, 400 gold. Someone made a bid again. This time, it was Zicheng. She didn't want to make a move so early, but that stone had an inexplicable attraction to her, as if it originally belonged to her. She didn't expect that the stone that made her feel special would almost belong to someone else while she was in a daze for a moment. 400 gold. Room 2 bids 400 gold. Is there anyone else? 500 gold, 600 gold. Zicheng didn't let go 1,000 gold. Irene called out with a cold smile. She remembered that it was written in the book that Zicheng only spent 300 gold to get this ancient wise beast egg. With the help of the ancient wise beast, who knew how many opportunities he had. Now that she was involved, Zicheng wanted to buy this ancient wise beast egg with 300 gold. It was simply a dream, 1,200 gold. Zicheng frowned. He felt that this voice was very familiar, 1,500 gold. Irene continued to raise the price. 1,800 gold, the 2 of them went back and forth, and soon, the price was raised to 10,000 gold. The people in the other rooms began to pay attention to this unremarkable stone. Could it be that this stone was really a treasure? If it was, they couldn't let it fall into the hands of others. 12,000 gold. The person in box number 5 began to bid. 20,000 gold. Box 4 didn't fall behind. Irene and Zicheng were a bit confused. What were these people doing here? 100,000 gold. Suddenly, an elegant voice rang out. Third brother. Caesar was stunned. He didn't expect his third brother to be here. His third brother didn't like to go out. Why would he come to Falling Jade Island? It was too dangerous right now. Caesar was stunned by his brother's appearance. He then thought about the chaotic situation on Falling Jade Island and began to worry. It had to be said that before Caesar was completely captivated by Zicheng, he was still a good brother who cared about his younger brother. The person who made the bid was none other than Shozo. He didn't expect so many people to join in. Moreover, there was another woman competing with Zicheng. He clearly heard that when Zicheng obtained the ancient wise beast egg, no one competed with her. Chapter 344. The person who bid was none other than Xiazhua. Xiazhua hadn't expected so many people to join in. Moreover, there was another woman competing with Zicheng. He'd clearly heard that when Zicheng had obtained the ancient Rui beast egg, no one had competed with her. Xiazhua was a little confused. He didn't know if the person who told him this had remembered wrongly, or if he'd gone back in time and changed the development of the situation. No matter what, he couldn't let Zicheng obtain this ancient Rui beast egg. 120,000. Irene continued to bid. She hadn't expected that it would be so difficult to rob the female lead. When the female lead wanted to buy it, no one competed with her. Now that she'd joined in, there were so many people competing. Was this the difference in treatment between the female lead and the supporting female lead? Irene shook her head. She didn't care about the female lead or the supporting female lead. In short, she had to get this ancient Rui beast egg. This was one of the female lead's strongest cheats. 110,000. 120,000. 150,000. The people who joined in the bidding were all VIPs from the second floor. After Xiazhua joined in, 2 other rooms also bid. Later, Zicheng raised the price to 150,000. The guests in the rooms who'd originally only been curious about this unknown or thought for a few seconds and didn't join in the bidding. Although the guests in the rooms on the second floor were rich, their money didn't grow on trees. If they didn't have enough money, they could still buy this unknown ore and study it. Spending too much money on this useless thing wasn't like they had too much to eat. The guests in rooms 4 and 5 gave up on this round of bidding. Now, only Zicheng, Irene, and Xiazhua were left bidding. Senior Mingxi, do you think there's something special about this lucky stone? Even the other rooms are bidding, Mo Gui asked curiously. He really didn't know what this egg-like stone was. The people in the rooms on the second floor had all seen good things before. If they were bidding, it must be something good. Mingxi carefully looked at the stone-like object on the stage and shook his head. I can't see it either. Fengwu heard a weak voice speaking. Save me, save me. Boo-hoo. Save me. What the hell is this place? Why are there so many people surrounding yours truly? It was that rock. Fengwu's eyes widened. This was the first time she had heard stone speak, and she felt that it was very rare. Fengwu blinked and turned to tug at the corner of Mingxi's shirt. What's wrong? Mingxi felt someone pulling him. He turned around and saw the Fengwu girl. That, I want it. Fengwu said. Mingxi was slightly taken aback, but he smiled and nodded, okay. It was just a rock. If Fengwu wanted it, Mingxi naturally wouldn't refuse. As the prince of the Silver Moon Ancient Kingdom and the next Moon Emperor, Mingxi wasn't someone who lacked money. One must know that he had the support of an entire country behind him. If you like it, I'll bid for it for you. Mingxi stroked Fengwu's little head. It felt good to the touch as always. NN. Fengwu girl's eyes were smiling. 500,000. Mingxi bid. The 3 people who had just raised the bid to 250,000 turned to look at the room where the voice came from. On the signboard beside the room, there was a large 0. Furthermore, the font was different from the other rooms. It was obvious that the person sitting in this room was of a higher status than the guests in the other rooms. Room 0 was opened. Xiazhua was stunned. He knew of the existence of Room 0. This room had always been reserved for auctions. No matter how tight the auctions were, the owner would never open this room for emergencies. This was because the people who could sit in this room had to be recognized by the Guyu auction house. Otherwise, no matter how much money you offered, you wouldn't be able to enter Room 0. Just who was it? Did this happen in his previous life? Even if Xiazhua racked his brains, he couldn't think of anything. Who asked him to be a shut-in in his previous life? Because he knew he wasn't well liked, he rarely went out. Naturally, he didn't know much about the outside world. This time, when he transmigrated back, it was his father and Zicheng's original friends and suitors who told him all the big and small things about Zicheng that he found out. If they didn't tell him, even if he went back in time, he wouldn't be able to stop Zicheng from taking away the five-element heart. Because of his shut-in nature, he didn't know where Zicheng got the five-element heart. So the mysterious guest in room 0, he didn't know if the same thing happened in his previous life, or if he was too shut in and didn't know. Or maybe it was because he went back in time and changed a lot of things, allowing someone to enter room 0. Xiaozhua couldn't figure it out, and neither could Aaron. She was certain that in the original novel, no one had ever entered this room 0. So who was the owner of this private room? Damn! Can't she just make a comeback? What happened to the comeback style? Zicheng didn't know what would happen in the future. Of course, she hadn't read the novel with her as the female lead, so she was curious about room 0. Her attention was drawn to the ancient Rui beast egg. She wasn't in the mood to care about other people's business. The most important thing now was to get the egg. Just now, Zicheng specially used the system's scanning and identification function to check the attributes of the stone on the stage. She didn't expect it to be an ancient Rui beast egg. Ancient Rui beasts were known as the favored children of heaven and earth. They had wisdom that ordinary people couldn't match, and their lifespan was longer than other mythical beasts. Ancient Rui beast eggs had a kind of support skill given by heaven and earth. This skill was very powerful. Although they couldn't fight, they could rely on their support skills and superior wisdom to live better than other magical beasts. Zicheng was jealous of such a treasure. In her favorability system store, the price of the ancient Rui beast was enough to make people cry to death. That was a pet that was more awesome than a mythical beast. In fact, ancient Rui beast was also a member of the mythical beast family. Because they were different from ordinary mythical beasts, they were called Rui beasts. Ancient Rui beasts were rarer than those ordinary mythical beasts. Whether there were other Rui beasts in this world was still a mystery. After knowing the origin of the egg on the stage, Zicheng didn't intend to give up this ancient Rui beast egg. No matter what price she had to pay, she must get it. She felt that this egg existed because of her and was destined to belong to her. Chapter 345. Room 0, which no one had entered until now, had a bid. This was incredible, even the big families were shocked. There was no doubt that the people in the other boxes were all from aristocratic clans. However, Box 0 was a box that even people from large worlds like them, as well as the island master Luwuji, did not have the right to enter. Who were the people in this box? Had they also come for the sea god's tomb? All of a sudden, everyone's thoughts started to wander. No one was paying attention to what was on the stage anymore. They were all guessing who the owner of Room 0 was. What kind of person had the face to make the Guyu Auction House's Jade Drop Island branch owner, Claude, open Room 0 for him? Someone, go and find out who is sitting in Box 0. Go find out who's in Room 0. Go ask the people in the auction house, who's in Room 0. The owners of the various private rooms all took action and sent out their trusted aides to handle this matter. For a mysterious person whose name, surname, identity, and appearance were unknown, these aristocratic families naturally wanted their subordinates to figure out the other party's identity as soon as possible. No matter what these people were thinking, the auction continued. The ancient Rui beast egg had already reached a high price of 800,000 gold. None of the four parties were willing to let it go. The auction continued. 850,000. 900,000, 1 million. 1,100,000. The four people who were still participating in the auction were determined to get it. None of them were willing to give it up. Wow! What's going on today? This item that no one wants after dozens of bids is sold for 1 million gold. This is unbelievable. I'm wondering if I'm still asleep. I feel like I'm dreaming. These people are too fucking rich. They spent more than $1 million to buy a useless piece of rock. We don't understand the world of the rich. Rich people. Spending 1 million gold on a useless stone. The people sitting in the hall on the first floor all looked at the rooms on the second floor with envy. Most of the people sitting on the first floor were adventurers or disciples of small or medium forces. Because their family background wasn't high enough, they could only sit in the hall and participate in the auction. They were envious of the people who could sit on the second floor. Now that these people were willing to spend 1 million gold on a useless piece of ore, they couldn't help but cry out. As for the people on the first floor, it was impossible for the people in the private rooms on the second floor to pay attention to them. They were not from the same world, so who would pay attention to them? That's too expensive, isn't it? A single stone costs more than 1 million. Margaret couldn't help but marvel. She used her spiritual power to test it and found that it was a piece of ore with extremely high hardness. Such a hard ore might really be a treasure. Unfortunately, an ore that couldn't be melted was useless to them. Unless they could find the heaven and earth divine fire, there might be a chance. However, it wasn't as if he was crazy to get a divine flame for a piece of ore. Unless he needed the ore to save his life, who would be so bored? It's already reached 1.5 million. Those three are really persistent. Senior Ming Shi increased the bid by 200,000, but they still followed. Mo Gue rubbed his chin, expressing that he didn't understand the world of the rich. Ming Shi increased the bid once more, and the price had already reached 2 million. 2 million gold wasn't a small amount, but to the people in the private rooms on the second floor, it wasn't a big amount. Zicheng and Irene were both wealthy people. Zicheng used modern knowledge to open many shops in ancient times, and even created many special delicacies. Now, there were many shops in the Heavenly Wind continent, and Zicheng naturally didn't lack money. As for Irene, in order to hide her identity, she didn't take the initiative to use modern knowledge to start her own business. However, she had a divine artifact like her life space. In Aaron space, there were many rare elixirs that were hard to find in the world. In addition, she herself was a high-level pharmacist. If one were to ask what profession on the continent was the fastest way to earn money, it would naturally be the pharmacist. Since she had spirit medicines and was a pharmacist, Irene didn't lack money. As for Xiazhua, he was a direct descendant of the Blakeston family. Although he didn't have much ability, due to his father's favor, he didn't lack money. Ming Shi, as the prince of the Silver Moon Ancient Kingdom, had more money than the three of them. Therefore, the price of the ancient Rui beast egg was very high, and no one wanted to give it up. Claude, who was sitting in another room, frowned. He raised his hand to call the steward over, and whispered a few words. The steward immediately accepted the order and left. Not long after, a maid rushed onto the stage, ran to Lu Shui's side, and whispered in her ear. Lu Shui's smile froze, as if something unexpected had happened. After the maid passed the message, she left. Lu Shui coughed lightly, and an apologetic smile appeared on her face. My apologies, due to the owner of this auction item, due to personal reasons, this auction is not counted. Lu Shui, on behalf of the Guyu Auction House, would like to express my deepest apologies to all of you. Lu Shui apologized with an apologetic smile. After Lu Shui finished speaking, the people below the stage and on the second floor exploded. What the hell? Taking back an item that's already on the stage, is this a joke? Since when did the Guyu Auction House have this rule? Are you kidding me? Do you think we don't know that this broken stone originally belonged to your Guyu Auction House? The second floor box was also not calm. No one thought that Claude would do such a thing, and the excuse he found was so perfunctory. What auction item's owner wanted to take back the item? Fuck, do you think we don't know your Guyu Auction House's rules? No matter what item is on the auction list, it can't be taken back, not to mention an item that's already on the stage. Your Guyu auction house found such an excuse, aren't you bored? Do you think I'm a fool? At the same time, some people exclaimed. Looks like the person in box 0 is really powerful, or else Claude who eats people without spitting out their bones, how could he be willing to do such a thing? They thought that the ancient Rui beast egg was taken back because Ming Shi sent people to raise the price. In reality, Ming Shi and the rest were also in a state of confusion. They also didn't think that it could be played like this, so they actually raised the price for nothing. Ajur smiled knowingly, don't worry, that stone will be sent to us soon. Ming Shi also thought of this point, and after frowning slightly, he relaxed his brows and didn't say anything. Chapter 346. A look of realization flashed across Matson's eyes. He understood as well. Riot and Mo Gui were already looking at the door, waiting for someone to deliver the goods. Sure enough, within 2 or 3 minutes, a beautiful maid stood at the door with a box in her arms. This is a gift from the boss for young Master Ming Shi. The boss said that young Master Ming Shi must accept it. The maid respectfully placed the box on the table. Seeing that Ming Shi didn't refuse, she let out a sigh of relief and walked out. Quick, see if it's that stone. As soon as the maid left, Mo Gui impatiently rushed to the table and opened the box immediately. Inside the beautifully wrapped wooden box was the ancient Rui beast egg. On the other hand, the people in the other 3 private rooms couldn't stay calm. From the moment they heard that the ancient Rui beast egg had been removed, the 3 of them were dumbfounded, especially Shozo. He was the one who couldn't believe it the most. He could swear that this had never happened in his previous life. In his previous life, the ancient Rui beast egg had landed in Zicheng's hands without a hitch. He didn't expect such a variable to happen in this life. For a moment, Shozo didn't know what to do. He was prepared to fight Zicheng to the end. No matter what, he wouldn't let her get the ancient Rui beast egg. In the end, he guessed the beginning, but not the ending. Zicheng and Irene's feelings were very complicated. Zicheng felt that something that originally belonged to her had left her. This made her heart ache, and her face turned pale. Caesar thought that she wasn't feeling well and personally poured a cup of tea for her. Eve hurriedly fed it to Zicheng. Zicheng took the tea and forced a smile. I'm fine. I just suddenly felt a little dizzy. Why don't we go back and rest? I'll go outside and find a doctor to take a look at you, Rika said with concern. No need. I'm fine. I'll be fine after some rest. Zicheng shook her head. She didn't want to go back now. Her feelings couldn't be wrong. She clearly felt that the ancient Rui beast egg was destined to belong to her. Why did it fall into someone else's hands? Who was it? Who robbed her of her opportunity? At this moment, her heart ached terribly. It was as if someone had dug out a piece of flesh from her heart. This feeling was terrible. Are you still thinking about that ore? Why don't I go and find out who the owner of that ore is? If that person is willing to sell it, then we can buy it directly from that owner. Caesar didn't know the significance of Box 0. He wasn't someone from this island, and the reason why he was here was because of the opening of the sea god's tomb. He didn't know anything about Box 0 in the Guyu auction house. If he knew the significance of Box 0, he would be able to guess the reason why Claude removed the items from the auction. Won't this be too troublesome for you? Although Zicheng knew that it wasn't good to trouble a friend she had only met a few times, that ancient Rui beast egg was very important to her. She felt that it was something very important to her. She must take back what belonged to her, so even if she knew it wasn't good, she could only agree. Of course, it was impossible for her to agree immediately. She still had to be reserved. No, I originally wanted to give you a gift. Since you like that or so much, then I'll definitely help you. Looking at Caesar's serious and domineering face, Zicheng's heart calmed down. It's okay, she still has hope. As long as she can find the seller, she can definitely get the ancient Rui beast egg back. What a pity, it was actually removed. Elisa felt very sorry for Irene. She could see that Irene liked that ore very much, but there were too many people fighting for it. Later, it was inexplicably removed. Irene took a deep breath. The only thing she felt fortunate about now was that this ancient Rui beast egg didn't fall into the hands of the female lead. If the ancient Rui beast with the ability to predict appeared, she didn't know if she, a transmigrator, would be discovered. Elisa, can you find out where that ore went? She still couldn't give up such a big golden finger. Elisa cutely tilted her head and blinked her innocent big eyes. Although I can't find out, but if I didn't guess wrong, that ore must have appeared on the table in box 0. Box 0. Irene was stunned. She didn't think that the so-called owner of the auction item withdrew the item for personal reasons. Sure enough, there are privileged classes everywhere. I hate privileged classes. Elisa, can you guess the identity of the person in the box? That voice was obviously changed. It wasn't the original voice at all. It seemed that the owner of box 0 also wanted to hide his identity, so he changed his voice. I can't guess, but it shouldn't be someone from the nearby aristocratic families. They don't have so much face to be invited into box 0. The most likely person is someone from the mainland. They might have come for the sea god's tomb. Elisa's answer made Irene a little disappointed, but she wouldn't give up like this. She would definitely find that person. No one except her knew how to hatch the ancient Rui beast egg. The ancient Rui beast egg was just a hard stone in the hands of others. It was useless at all. At that time, if she paid a high enough price, she would definitely be able to make the person who took away the ancient Rui beast egg sell it back to her. As long as it didn't fall into the hands of the female lead Zicheng, she wasn't afraid of falling into the hands of anyone. The auction downstairs was still continuing. There were constantly auction items being brought out, and each item sold for a good price. But so far, the aristocratic families on the second floor hadn't made a move yet. The things they wanted were still at the back. This is really a stone. Why do I feel like it's an egg? Margaret knocked on the eggshell. I think so too, but it shouldn't be a magical beast egg. How can a magical beast egg be so small? Ajur picked up the ancient Rui beast egg with one hand and checked it with his divine sense. He didn't detect any signs of life. How could the ancient moon auction house mistake an ore with a magical beast egg? Stupid humans, with your strength, you want to find this young master. Dream on. Fengwu blinked doubtfully. She heard this voice again. It was a cute child's voice. It sounded so cute that it could melt people's hearts. This is an ore. I've never seen this kind of egg-shaped ore in books. Riot held the egg while thinking about what kind of ore it was. He thought about all the books about ores he had read before, but he still didn't have a clue. Why would Xiao Wu like this kind of stone? It's not fun at all. After looking at it, Margaret felt bored and brought her attention back to the auction. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.